since he said that, 3 plagues have been inflicted on him, and now he's not able to say no or say yes. He can't.
Right.
God's like, no, you had your chances. Now you're going to sit there and you're going to take it.
Well,
And
but he did say yes.
Right. But like I said,
Yeah.
Moses is like, shh. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Eating the Apple, the podcast where 2 non-believers take an honest look at the Bible. I'm Jeff.
I'm Chris.
And where we left off in the last episode was Exodus chapter 6. God makes multiple promises and Moses has multiple doubts. Instead of jumping right back into the chapter 7 with the plagues, we kind of wanted to do a little bit of a recap and a little bit of explication over some of the things that we found in our research since then. Chris, you had something you wanted to touch specifically.
Yeah, I don't know why, but I was sitting there, I think I was in the car at the time, and I had this kind of a mini epiphany. If you think about it, God made the promises or whatever, and Jacob's supposed to have usurped him, taken his birthright and stuff. But from Esau's perspective, he won because he comes back, he eats the soup, sells the birthright, whatever. And then Jacob steals it, puts on the fur and everything and claims to be Esau and gets a blessing from his father. But then, he takes off. Obviously, Esau wanted to kill him because of what happened, but he just takes off. I don't see him escaping away with, all of the inheritance he's supposed to have. So, if you think about it, Esau's got all of this stuff and then his brother disappears. He's got all of his father's stuff as, the only son now who's collecting all this. Eventually he becomes nations as well, right? He's supposed to have been the father of all these other tribes. So when his brother comes back, obviously, of course he's going to be happy now. He's forgotten about what happened because he's got all the stuff, and then of course Jacob turns around and lies to him and stuff. But if you look at it from Esau's perspective, he kind of won, you know what I mean? It kind of muddies the water, in my opinion, about where the blessings are supposed to have gone. They both get it. So why
Well, I wonder, do you make a distinction here between patrilineal blessings and material wealth? Esau's doing well for himself, but did he receive the double portion of the inheritance or whatever?
He essentially got it all. Just the way the story kind of goes, Jacob escapes and he goes and he works for Laban, gets his wives and all of his material possessions, coming from there and multiplying and getting all of the spotted and speckled sheep and all that stuff. So Esau presumably is left with everything.
Mm-hmm. I mean, like all the things that Isaac had, or that, yeah, that's interesting. That's kind of a compelling thought. Except for the covenantal promise, right? I wonder if
that's what I'm saying. According to, if you look at it from Esau's perspective, he got that as well because he eventually became nations as well. You know what I mean?
I see. Yeah.
So he got everything that he wanted.
Well, but even then, Esau, the northern. I mean, we don't really numerate the tribes of Esau like we do Isaac,
right?
But of Jacob, I mean. But what we do see is that they're prominent figures in the Middle East, the Near East, and unfortunately, they have to get the hell out of the way whenever Moses comes a knocking. He's like, hey, or not Moses, and who takes over from Moses later? I forget. Anyway, we'll get there. But okay, yeah. So here we go. The land of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites. So all those folks. Joshua, there you go. So yeah, when Joshua leads the Israelites back into Canaan, all those folks got to get out of the way. But we'll see. They don't take too kindly.
Anyway, it was just a thought that I had. I was probably listening to a podcast of some sort, and it popped into my head, and I was like, hey, he won. From his own perspective, he won.
Yeah, he did well. And from that, not only did he have to spoil all those many years. Granted, that's we talked about that at length, but to get what he got, he was also afraid whenever he heard that Esau's band was coming. He was like, oh my gosh, like here he comes. He bowed down before him and offered him, he called him his servant and things like that. Like he knew that he had wronged Esau. Yeah. But then Esau was gracious and he was like, I'm good. I see no reason to think that there's any ill will to be had here or whatever. No, that's a pretty good point. I like it. Anything else on that before we move on to the plagues?
No, I don't think so.
In that case, yeah. So we're going to start with chapter 7, where the Lord says to Moses, "See, I've made you like a god to Pharaoh, and your brother Aaron will be your prophet. You are to say everything I command you, and your brother Aaron is to tell Pharaoh to let the Israelites go out of his country. But I will harden Pharaoh's heart, and though I multiply my signs and wonders in Egypt, he will not listen to you. Then I will lay my hand on Egypt, and with mighty acts of judgment, I will bring out my divisions, my people, the Israelites. And the Egyptians will know that I'm the Lord when I stretch out my hand against Egypt and bring the Israelites out."
Yeah. So once again, Moses is God and Aaron is his prophet, which just seems really weird to me, at least in today's reckonings, like how we view God and stuff. That just seems a little blasphemous. But Aaron's supposed to speak for him, but he doesn't most of the time. Moses actually is able to do it, despite his uncircumcised lips. And, like, I don't know. Oh, and the whole thing about God hardening Pharaoh's heart, it's a dick move.
Especially whenever, to me, this is the prologue, right? God is letting us all know what's about to happen. He's letting Moses know. Yeah. But he's essentially calling his shot here. He's saying, hey, like, just be prepared. This is what's going to happen. He doesn't, all of Exodus is, or I should say, like, what's about to come is to me pretty well written. It's very interesting the way the story develops, the way God's intentions develop and things like that. But he's essentially saying right now, God is, that I'm going to intervene and there's not really anything anyone can do about it. Like, you know what I mean?
I mean, yeah, I would dispute the well-written part, but I get what you're saying. So there's contradictions in the story and everything else. And if you think, well, it's just about the way it's written, then you're talking about the translations, are well structured or whatever. But yeah, I don't know.
Well, that is what I mean. I mean the themes, the way.
Okay.
So there's an evolution of the struggle between God and the Pharaoh, right? And I kind of enjoyed that, and they did a good job keeping this idea, this theme of struggle, of like kind of this push and pull going, and I respect that. So let's get into it. Moses and Aaron did just as the Lord commanded them. Moses was 80 and Aaron was 83. So just a little note there. Keep that in mind. These are aged. These are gray, hoary folks.
Mm-hmm.
So Aaron's staff. This is the part where Aaron's staff becomes a snake. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron, when Pharaoh says to you, perform a miracle. Go ahead.
Well, I thought it was Moses' staff. The God told Moses to take the staff and do it,
Yeah. He's like, here, hold my staff. Perform a miracle. Then say to Aaron, take your staff and throw it down before Pharaoh, and it will become a snake. So Moses and Aaron went to Pharaoh and did just as the Lord commanded. Aaron threw his staff down in front of Pharaoh and his officials, and it became a snake. Pharaoh then gets his magicians over, and they do the same thing with their, it's called secret arts, but it's called different things in different translations.
Mm-hmm.
The magicians are called soothsayers in other translations, or what's the other word? Necromancers in the Hebrew.
Yeah, I think so.
So anyway, and then so they use their divine arts, and so they're not impressed. They're like, big whoop, we can do that too,
Mm-hmm.
But so this is kind of just setting the table, right? This is saying, look, we're here to show you that we're dealing with stuff that we're not just slaves. We know more than just bricks and straw. Like, we have staffs. Right. We have snakes.
Yeah. They have snake canisters hidden up their legs.
Right? It could be. Yeah. At least the magicians do. They're like, a big deal, big whoop. So all of the magicians' staffs became snakes, and the Pharaoh was like, no big, who cares? And so it says, the Pharaoh's heart became hard, and he would not listen to them, just as the Lord had said. Now, the Lord didn't say that. The Lord said he would harden Pharaoh's heart. But in here it's saying the Pharaoh's heart became hard. So I'm personally going to be I'm going to be as charitable as possible and
Mhm.
say that we can't just assume that every time the Pharaoh's heart becomes hard, it's because of God. It will literally say later that the Lord hardens Pharaoh's heart. So
Yeah.
all we got so far is the prediction that the Lord would harden Pharaoh's heart, and here we have Pharaoh's heart becoming hard. What
Yeah.
do you think?
I did want to also say that the magic bit in the study Bible note, it says that it was sleight of hand or demonic power. You know,
Mm,
they're not sure, one of the two. But yeah, as far as the hardening of hearts, like I said, it's a dick move. It kind of implies both, depending on which way you read it. So I'm wondering if that is an effect of having more than one redactor or whatever, putting text together. But
mhm,
I think the overall thing is God's the one doing it. You
mhm.
know.
Yeah, especially, I mean, I think it's fair to assume that given that he's already said that he's going to, like we have that in our mind now, Okay, so God is, or the Pharaoh isn't, he's not impressed by these little monkey shines. That no big deal. Who cares? I've seen snaps turn into snakes. I don't care. So now they know it's time to up the ante. So then the Lord said to Moses, Pharaoh's heart is unyielding. He refuses to let the
It's
people go.
it's unyielding because of your hand.
So we haven't even begun the first plague, and this is already an issue. So Pharaoh's heart's unyielding, and he refuses to let the people go. Go to Pharaoh in the morning as he goes out to the river. Confront him on the bank of the Nile, and take in your hand the staff that was changed into a snake. Then say to him, the Lord, the God of the Hebrews, has sent me to say to you, let my people go so that they may worship me in the wilderness. But until now you've not listened. This is why the Lord says, by this you will know that I am the Lord. With the staff that's in my hand, I will strike the water of the Nile, and it will be changed into blood. The fish in the Nile will die, and the river will stink. The Egyptians will not be able to drink its water. So I want to mention here that he's saying the Lord. The translation is Yahweh, Yod He Vov He, right? And so like what Moses is saying to the Pharaoh, he's mentioning a God that the Pharaoh is not familiar with. He's like, this is not the God that I care anything about. You haven't demonstrated that this God has any kind of powers that I haven't seen from my pantheon of gods, or that through my cadre of magicians, can conjure anything different than what you can do. So he's not impressed, right?
Mhm.
But one interesting thing here, I think we're getting an introduction to Moses letting the Pharaoh know what's going to happen. And I think that's somewhat telling. He's like, I can do these things, but also just so you know, these are going to be the consequences.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much of that is just a storytelling artifact, or if it's important to the I mean, I guess people for thousands of years have debated this kind of stuff and thought about it, but I don't know what to think in terms of that. You know,
Well, I mean, it's nothing but a storytelling device, but it's still setting the table, like,
right, right.
yeah. So the Lord continues, tell Aaron, take your staff and stretch out your hand over the waters of Egypt, over the streams and canals, over the ponds and all the reservoirs, and they will turn to blood. Blood will be everywhere in Egypt, even in vessels of wood and stone. Now, are we to assume here that all the liquid, all the water is blood, or will be blood?
Yeah. So I do have a note first off that at one point it says strike the water, and one it says hold your hand out over it. But if so, in order to get water coming up here, they have to dig alongside the Nile. So I guess like the sand filters the blood out or something. I don't know where the division is, but
Mm-hmm.
I, man, I don't know. I've heard explanations that some large amount of iron was released in the water upstream or whatever, and it just came down. I've heard all kinds of explanations that are trying to figure out how it happened. Um, I don't know what to think about it.
Hmm. Yeah, I couldn't begin to have a guess on like the actual scientific
Yeah,
explanation.
it,
Um,
it didn't
so,
happen,
and
but
also this is another interesting thing here, where again, Aaron is supposed to be Moses's mouthpiece. All of
mhm.
Moses never said anything like, "Oh, I'm all thumbs. I don't know how to hold a staff." He said, "I can't speak well. No one's going to believe me." Right? And here we are. God is telling Moses to have Aaron do these physical things for him.
Mhm.
Like, you tell the Pharaoh this, and Aaron's going to wave his staff. It's almost as if Moses is like, "Wait, that's not what I said. Why is Aaron even involved now? I can hold a staff. I did it in front of you in front of the burning bush." Yeah. Okay. Okay. So So Aaron is going to do this. So Moses and Aaron did just as the Lord commanded. He raised his staff in the presence of Pharaoh, and his officials struck the water of the Nile, and all the water was changed into blood. The fish in the Nile indeed died, and the river smelled so bad that the Egyptians could not drink its water. Blood was everywhere in Egypt.
Yeah, blood was everywhere in Egypt. So is it just the Nile, or did all the water of Egypt change into blood?
Yes. Well, I don't know, because in the very next verse, the Egyptian magicians did the same things by their secret arts. With what water? How did they do that? Like, it's almost as if they had like a vessel. They're like, this is water. Now it's blood. See? Like,
maybe they took some wine and turned it to water and then turned it to blood.
It does require secret arts to do that. So Pharaoh's heart became hard. He saw the magicians turn blood into blood, or water into blood, and he wouldn't listen to Moses and Aaron, just as the Lord said. Instead, he turned and went into his palace and did not take this to heart. So his heart didn't have to be hard. He was just like, my heart's the same. Like, he just turned around. He's like, catch me whenever you got something good.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, exactly. All of the water is turned to blood, but my guys can do that too. So screw it.
He's like, granted, the entire, like the very thing that gives my entire people life is stinky blood with dead fish. Like, let me see what's on Netflix. And all the Egyptians dug along the Nile to get drinking water because they could not drink the water of the river. So there's
all the water. Like, I don't get
all the water up to then. All the new water hasn't been messed with, hasn't been adulterated yet,
I suppose.
Okay, and then at the very last verse of chapter 7, 7 days passed after the Lord struck the Nile. So now we have a week passes, and Pharaoh is still just bored. Like, whatever. Okay, so moving on with the second
plague is frogs.
Yeah.
Yeah, but so all the water's blood and the fish died. Presumably frogs need water as well. So did they come out of the water because of the blood? You know what I mean? Where did they come from? Did Aaron have to go all around and like find the little bits of ponds and streams and it's all blood. Like,
yeah, exactly.
I don't know.
They said the frogs came from the streams and canals and ponds. I guess. Yeah, that's a good question. Okay, so the Lord said to Moses, this is a week later, go to Pharaoh and say to him, this is what the Lord says, let my people go so that they may worship me. If you refuse to let them go, I will send a plague of frogs into the country. The Nile will teem with frogs. They'll come up into your palace, into your bedroom, and into your bed, and the houses of your officials, and on your people. They're going to be everywhere. The frogs will come up onto you and your people and all of your officials. Yes, you just said that. The Lord said to Moses, tell Aaron, stretch out your hand and with your staff over the streams and canals and ponds and make frogs come up onto the lands of Egypt. So
that's what I'm getting at. Did he have to travel? How long did it take? Maybe that's why a week passed. He had to,
Oh, you're saying did he have to go to all the different,
streams and ponds and all of that? Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It says over the streams and canals and ponds. Like, they're not all in one spot. You can't just stand on a, precipice and hold your staff out over everything.
Well, it doesn't say his staff. It says his hand.
Oh, that's true.
He doesn't even have a staff. Now, if they wanted to tell us it was a staff, we could imagine a very long staff. Long staff. But no, it's his hand this time. His staff is somewhere else. So Aaron did that with his hand, turned all the water into all the frogs came out of the water, the blood water, with his hand. Pharaoh summoned Moses and Aaron and said, pray to the Lord to take the frogs away from me and my people, and I will let you go to offer your sacrifices to the Lord.
Hang on. The magicians of Egypt also made frogs appear. So
I missed that.
they're compounding their own plague.
Oh, you're right. I missed that.
Yeah. Verse 7.
They're making it worse. And how do they know? How do they know which frogs were the magicians' frogs?
Yeah.
I mean, if the frogs were this makes it seem like the frogs were literally. I mean, how are you supposed to tell? Yeah. It's like that one right there, my lord. I mean, or you can say see this empty bag? Boop, frogs. And you're like, okay, well, sure, I'll take it.
See that frog coming out of the water? That one's God's. This one's mine. That one's God's. Exactly.
You can tell the ones that are God's because they're speckled and spotted.
Yes, very true. There you go.
So Pharaoh said to Moses and Aaron, pray to your Lord to take the frogs away from me and for me, my people, and I will let you go offer your sacrifices to the Lord.
So we have here, Pharaoh is demonstrating that he believes this is going on. He's asking Moses to make God stop it.
Mm-hmm.
So if God is not hardening Pharaoh's heart directly, he's really stupid. You know what I
The
mean?
Pharaoh is.
Yes. The Pharaoh sitting here going, "You're right. I believe you. God is doing this. Please ask him to stop." But it's just dumb.
Okay, let me offer you something that I read, and I think it was the Exodus you almost passed over by
Okay.
Rabbi Foreman.
Excellent. Excellent.
The Pharaoh is not interested in the power of these plagues. Have you come across this argument?
No, I haven't.
He doesn't care that the grandiosity. What he cares about is the precision. So he's saying that he's starting to realize everything you're saying that will happen has happened. My gods can't do that. We pray that the gods might might shine fortune on us and flood the Nile, not have eclipses, things like that. But maybe they will, maybe they won't. If they do, then we found favor in them. If they don't, then they're mad at us or they're mad at each other, right? This God is able to say, this is exactly what I said is going to happen, so this is what's going to happen. But Pharaoh, and what we're about to find out here is the Pharaoh is going to say, or Moses is going to say, all right, Pharaoh, the ball's in your court. When do you want us to flip the switch on the frogs? And Pharaoh's going to say, tomorrow.
So I think I heard a snippet of this kind of idea from that Bema podcast, but it doesn't hold water in my opinion. Because, like I said, it says directly, Moses does this. Pharaoh says, hey, you're right. This is your God doing it. Please ask him to stop. So, it also says that their magicians could also do this, but like the idea that the land is so completely covered that all the houses are filled and the temples and everything are overrun with frogs. And he's just like, nah, so what? Like, he knows God's doing this. He asked Moses to have God stop it, but he's not unconcerned. You know what I mean? That kind of pokes holes in that theory, in my opinion.
Well, yeah. And so like, I would agree that he comes off as being aloof and uncaring to the suffering that these things are causing him. But if I was going to push back on the idea that Pharaoh is stupid, it would just be to say that he's very calculated. He's doing things that he's basically, this is that push-pull I was talking about before, where he sees that these odd things are happening. This isn't an everyday occurrence, but he's unwilling to relent in acknowledging that this is something that he's incapable of also doing. You know what I'm saying? And so he's just letting all the suffering just be fodder for this little pissing match, right? And so he's willing to go to these lengths to challenge God on the precision of his power. And I find that to be, again, I find that I wouldn't say to me, Pharaoh doesn't come off as stupid, aloof, and uncaring.
Well, but then why ask Moses to have God stop it?
Because he's challenging God. He's like, okay, great, stop it then. If you can turn it on, can you turn it off? My gods can make it.
But then God does it. So like he's had the power demonstrated to him. You know what I mean? And yet he's like, okay, thanks Yahweh for, stopping this or whatever. And then, it just,
well, even in this plague, the Lord doesn't have to intervene yet. Pharaoh is still willing. Once the frogs, I guess the text says there was relief and Pharaoh hardened his heart. Here in a second, I'll say that. But it's not, there's still mounds of rotting frogs. It's not relief. It's just that there's not frogs crawling. Now they're just rotting and stinking up your entire country. So even in spite of that, he's still willing to be like, no, I'm good. Like I just
don't see how, unless God's directly hardening Pharaoh's heart, that Pharaoh could not be an imbecile and, in the face of all of this.
Okay. Well, let's continue to see, read and see if further imbecility is exposed. So yeah, he said, when do you want us to turn off these frogs? And Pharaoh said, tomorrow. Now this is long talked about, but why not right now? How is that any less impressive if you can just make the frogs die? It's not like they lived out their life cycle and then just died. They went away. They died tomorrow. Do it now. Like, what are you doing? It doesn't make sense to me. It's equally powerful to say now, especially more powerful, Because if you say tomorrow, how do you know that he's not conjuring some spell or whipping up a potion to make it happen? Where the same crap that your magicians do or whatever.
Right.
If you say now and Moses or whatever, Aaron waves his hand and the frogs go away, Pharaoh's like, oh, I mean, maybe this is maybe if he had done it immediately, Pharaoh would have no recourse to continue to harden his heart, right?
I don't know. I still think it's once Pharaoh is like, okay, ask your God to stop. At that point, you
He's
can't.
admitted.
Yeah, exactly.
Hmm.
He knows what's going on. He's understanding and willing to submit, and
Hmm.
insofar as to ask Moses to ask God to stop it.
Okay. Maybe, yeah. I'd be willing to say that he definitely is willing to admit that there's something external at play, something that he's not responsible for, nor his magicians or any of that.
Right.
Maybe, yeah. I'll just try to keep from getting hung up on the thought that he is fully aware of the scope that he's dealing with, because and I'm not sure if he doesn't really ever until we get to the 10th plague. It's not until the 10th plague where he's like the prophecy set forth in the first 6 chapters of Exodus, where the Egyptians are like, get the hell out of here. No, not until the 10th plague does that finally happen.
Well,
okay.
If you imagine, like, God's got Pharaoh's heart held tight in a grip, he's hardening it, and then he lets it go, and Pharaoh's like, what have I done? You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's true.
But again, that's, it's God's doing, not his. So,
yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, that's true. Also, I just wanted to make sure that I've committed to this, to saying so far that Pharaoh is in the story willing to play. He's willing to treat his people and his subjects like that very thing, like they're subhuman or something. Like it's almost
Right.
like he has that whole I am God or demigod type of thing. Like I am Pharaoh, I am a deity unto myself. Because I'm not sure if we're going to get to it today, but he continues to treat his people as just, fodder for these rites and wonders. Okay. So Moses said, indeed, we will do it tomorrow, Pharaoh. That way you'll know that there's no one like the Lord our God. The frogs will leave you and your houses, your officials and your people. They will remain only in the Nile. After Moses and Aaron left Pharaoh, Moses cried out to the Lord about the frogs he had brought to Pharaoh, and the Lord did what Moses asked. The frogs died in the houses, in the courtyards, in the field. They were piled into heaps, and the land reeked of them. But when Pharaoh saw that there was relief, he hardened his heart and would not listen to Moses and Aaron, just as the Lord had said. Yeah. They go back to the Nile. So they were in the Nile to begin with. The next plague is
blood didn't kill them, though.
What's that?
Blood didn't kill them, though.
Right. I didn't really chase it down, but I saw some writing about how they think that the scientific explanation for why the frogs all died was because the blood had some bacteria in it. All the dead fish emitted some bacteria and killed the frogs.
I guess.
It was like, okay, but where the frogs come from in the first place?
Yeah, well, that's one of those things that we talked about, that documentary we watched about the plagues. They just skip over all of this. Like, blood's red Nile, this is how it could have happened. Then we have frogs and we have flies, and they just completely gloss over it. And
Yep.
That's funny.
Okay, so the next plague is going to be gnats. This one's pretty interesting because this is the one where the magicians are finally saying, no, we can't do that. What happens is Lord said to Moses, have Aaron stretch out your staff, strike the dust of the ground, and throughout the land of Egypt there will be gnats. I should also mention that in other translations, gnats are lice, insects, things like that. So
right.
NIV has it as gnats.
It could be lots of things, but not flies specifically.
Yeah, I was going to say it's distinct from flies because flies are still to come.
Right.
Stretched out his staff and struck the dust of the ground. All the dust became gnats. And when the magicians tried to do this, they said they couldn't. They told Pharaoh, we can't do it. This is the finger of God. That's what they specifically used that appendage to describe what is at play, is the finger of God. But Pharaoh's heart was hard and he would not listen, just as the Lord had said. Now,
so do you think there's something special about it being finger versus hand or staff?
I think there is some recurring bodily, to do. I forget where or why, but there is some specificity to or there is a reason why it's so specific here. Maybe hopefully we can remember whenever if we come across it again. But yeah, I have read that. Let me think about it for a second.
Well, I'll talk while you're thinking. That Satan book that I've been reading, I still haven't finished it, but it's basically tells how Satan went from being just a tool of God to being this, evil character that's in charge of all evil and whatnot. But in it, they mention the right hand. Satan's always on the right hand. It's the right hand is action from God's perspective. If God's going to act, it's his right hand. It's why Christ sits on his right hand in heaven, and Christ is the one that comes back and does everything in Armageddon and all this stuff. So the right hand is definitely a thing that would have been known at the time as the hand of action, and that's why I think the finger stands out to me. I don't understand the significance of it in light of that.
Yeah, so I'm glad you brought that up. There's a lot of symbolism when it comes to right hand, especially if you're looking at it from a Christian context, sitting at the right hand of God and things like that. But they don't specify which finger this is. But what we are doing is we're kind of personifying God's appendages. There's I can't remember where I read it, and hopefully we can kind of, if we kind of lean on each other moving forward, we'll be able to remember this passage if we encounter something later. But it's just interesting. It's interesting because this seems sort of disjointed. This is the finger of God rather than this is just God. It also doesn't say the Lord. It just says God. The magicians are not saying, Yahweh, Adonai, what have you. They're just saying God. So this is their recognition. Maybe, their gods had, human traits. It could be that that's the language they speak when referring to their gods doing deeds. Could just be that. But anyway, I kind of got us off on this thing without any real reason why. But this is just, I appreciate what you say.
It's one thing to keep in mind. Anytime it says raise your hand out or whatever, it would have been understood to be the right hand. The right hand's the hand of action, right? That kind of stuff. So
very good. But the Pharaoh's heart was hard and he wouldn't listen. So keep in mind. So notice here that in the plague of gnats, there's no warning and there's no summary. It's just, we're just going to throw these gnats at them.
Yeah.
Like, now what? You know what I mean? Like it's almost taken out of, in the rest of the story, it's, hey, we're going to do this if you don't let us go. And Pharaoh says no. And it's like, okay, well, here comes the plague. In this case, it's just plague. The frogs happened. Frogs all died. Then the gnats happened. And then we're on to the next one, So just kind of we're not relenting here. We're just kind of giving them a little 1-2.
Right.
And so then the Lord said to Moses, get up early in the morning and confront Pharaoh as he goes to the river and say to him, this is what the Lord says, let my people go so they may worship me. If you do not let my people go, I will send swarms of flies on you and your officials, on your people and into your houses. The houses of the Egyptians will be full of flies. Even the ground will be covered with them. But on that day, I will deal differently with the land of Goshen, where my people live. No swarms of flies will be there, so that you know that I, the Lord, am in this land.
Hang on here. So God's decided that he's going to save the Israelites from the flies, but he didn't save them from not having drinking water. He didn't save them from the frogs or the gnats or lice or whatever. So I wonder what the distinction is for that. Why now?
This is the first instance in the text where we see Goshen being spared, but there's no, I'm not sure what to make of it first off, but I will say that there is, I have read some, explication on this, and they say that the other instances, they weren't impressed. They didn't think that there was anything of it. This has nothing to do with the power versus precision argument was at such a small scale at those points that there wasn't anything else to wonder about. Well, now the fact that Goshen's being spared, it's like, okay, so not only can you make it a specific thing that happens, but it's a specific thing in a specific place. You know what I mean?
Right, but like you go into the specificity of being able, the timing of these things. Why not spare his people? That would also go to this precision.
Well, I think it's because what the storytellers are trying to get across is that there's a widening of the sphere, right? And we didn't need. What I'm saying is you can basically assume maybe that Goshen was spared because Goshen is at the foot of the river. Like that's
right. You can't assume that Goshen was spared because it said all of the water of the land was parted.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
Like,
I
it's
don't
not a
know.
widening of the sphere. If anything, it's a, shrinking of the sphere, being
Hmm.
more accurate. But why not spare your people? The whole thing is to spare your people from, the bad stuff that's going on and happening to them. Why are
Hmm.
you inflicting them with these plagues as well?
Hmm. Yeah, good question. I don't know. I hadn't really considered that. Like I said, when I talk about the widening of the sphere, I mean more the narrative sphere. Like we're kind of we're giving you more to think
Okay.
about
Yeah.
here
Yeah.
by including that.
Okay.
It could very well be that the land of Goshen ran red with blood. Let's remember that whenever the Israelites are in need of some proof that Yahweh is God, because it's not always clear that what God says will do the trick with them does the trick. And you'd think that they'd already be like Moses would return to Goshen or something, and they'd be like, "Thank God you're here. You wouldn't believe what just happened to the Nile." The Nile rolls the other one, frogs. Like,
Yeah, frogs and gnats, and
yeah,
also,
exactly.
this is again, Moses is now talking. I guess Aaron's not involved.
Yeah. Yep, exactly. Yeah, and that's the other. You're right. Get up and confront the Pharaoh, as if Moses is already. It's already difficult for him to speak. Now he has the added, you know, contrivance of basically being combative to the Pharaoh. You know, I know that
Hmm.
if I'm like in a high anxiety state of mind, it's difficult for me to speak. You kind of you're at a loss for words. If I already have some sort of impediment of some sort, like it can only be worse. It's not as if Moses suddenly becomes like an expert orator whenever he has to demand that a person who considers himself a god, lets his people go, lets
Hmm.
a source of income go. Yeah. So anyway,
Well, and again, we're Pharaoh's under the assumption here that they're wanting to leave for 3 days.
yeah.
This is not let us go and be free. This is let us go on a vacation. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? And he's not letting them go. It's uh,
Another interesting thing I read about that. I'm not sure. I can't remember what we said about it, if anything. But Foreman says in the Parshat companion I'm reading
mhm.
on Exodus that the whole 3 days thing is kind of odd. He could have asked for anything. He could have said,
Uh,
"Hey, Pharaoh, let us go," and Pharaoh could have said no. And he's like, "Look, we're going to wreck this crap if you don't let us go." But instead, he's like, "Let us go for 3 days." And in the Parshat book, Foreman says that he's using language that the Pharaoh would understand. He's like, I understand. I recognize your greatness, and I'm willing to negotiate with you here. He's being duplicitous with the Pharaoh. He's like, this is what I have to say to get this thing to happen. I no longer care about showing all of my cards. I no longer deem it necessary to be upfront and honest with you. But if I were to say, if he were to immediately say right then and there, my God's going to wreck house, what would the answer be then? Pharaoh would bristle even more. He would start from a position of, hell no. Like he might even, inflict pain upon them.
sure, and that would be a great way to get Pharaoh to harden his own heart without
Mm-hmm.
God having had to do it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. 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 That's very true. But at the same time, you have Pharaoh's heart would be hard from the beginning, and we wouldn't see this sort of like expansion of God's power and
Well, we still could have.
he could have still
If
just done it.
right, I mean, if you'd come up and said, "Let my people go," or "God's going to wreck house," then he hardens his heart, and you could still have this expanding,
Yeah.
series of plagues that make it worse and worse for the Egyptians until he finally relents.
Mm-hmm.
But even up until the very end, God's doing the hardening and everything else. But up until the very end, Pharaoh still thinks they're just going out into the wilderness for a couple of days to burn some meat. He
Yeah.
goes and he eventually chases them to stop them from having a barbecue.
Yeah. He's like, hey, why are you guys going so far? Why are you crossing the sea? Like, that seems ridiculous. I said the wilderness. Right, so, all right. So the next day, and then the Lord did that the next day. He
Okay.
sent dense swarms of flies into the Pharaoh's palace, his officials. All throughout Egypt, the land was ruined by the flies. So we've ruined the water, we've ruined the land. And Pharaoh summoned Moses and Aaron and said, go sacrifice to your God here in the land. Like, I recognize that you speak for a power that's capable of doing these things, but
Mm-hmm.
why do you have to leave? You can just do it right here. And Moses said that wouldn't be right. The sacrifices that we offer our Lord would be detestable to you guys. If we offer sacrifices that are detestable in your eyes, will they not stone us? We have to take a 3-day journey into the wilderness to offer sacrifices to God as he commands us. And Pharaoh
I
says,
mean,
I will.
as if the Pharaoh couldn't stop his own people from stoning them.
That
Yeah,
too.
they're already removed. They're in Goshen. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
they could do their sacrifices there, and the vast majority of Egyptians would have no idea what's going on.
Do the Egyptians not do animal sacrifices? Do you
I
know?
don't think so.
Huh. Okay.
I
Well, that
haven't
would make
looked
sense.
into it. I probably should. I'm gonna make a note of that.
Yeah. Because I'm suddenly interested to see what's so detestable. If it's just because they're foreigners, that would explain why they don't want to eat with them. Just good old classic racism. But if like the things they do, it's like what?
Sure, but they also are supposed to detest shepherds for some reason, even though they probably also have
How do you
shepherds.
not? How do you not own livestock? I mean,
Yeah.
you do own livestock,
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, and so the ruse continues. At this again, we've already started down this path. We can't suddenly say, you know what? I don't want a 3-day journey. I want to leave forever. So now those are the stakes. That's not what happens here. The Moses just continues on with, just give us 3 days. Come on. And Pharaoh said, I'll let you go offer sacrifices in the wilderness, but not very far. Now go ask God. And Moses said, okay, as soon as I leave, I'll pray to God, and tomorrow the flies will leave Pharaoh and his officials and his people. Only let Pharaoh be sure that if he does not act deceitfully again by not letting us go and offer.
We're lying to you, but you better not lie to us.
Yeah. Moses left Pharaoh and prayed to the Lord, and the Lord did what Moses asked. I guess. Okay. The Lord did what Moses asked. Like, I'm struggling with this. Does the Lord not know what the requirements already are? Did he not know how long he needed to let the plague continue? Another day? It's not like God's just sitting around waiting for Moses to call and being like, all right, when are we doing this? He's like, my plague finger is starting to hurt.
Yeah. I mean, you could kind of see maybe if Moses is sitting there in front of Pharaoh and his officials and being like, okay, God, now it's time, please stop this. But it doesn't. He goes off and prays to God.
And again, you could do it. You could say, do it immediately.
Yeah.
God would be able to do that. But instead,
why can't he use his magic staff? His magic wand.
All the staff does is turn stuff off. Turn stuff on? Does it ever turn stuff off? I wonder if they can wave it and all the flies go away.
Yeah, I don't know.
So then Moses left and prayed to the Lord, and the Lord did what Moses asked. The flies left Pharaoh and his officials and his people. Not a fly remained. So they're not dead. They didn't die. They just left. So interesting. But this time Pharaoh also hardened his heart and would not let the people go. So, that's the end of chapter 8. Let's see. The big one, though, well, I shouldn't say this is the big one, but this is the one where it's kind of getting a little out of hand. Like, if you want to make my land stink, if you want to turn my water for a little bit into blood just to demonstrate something, but then turn it back such that the frogs can still live in it, that's cool. But now God is going to kill all of the livestock. All of the livestock. Now, it says at the beginning that it's just going to be the cattle. But then we find at the end, nope, it's actually we killed it all. So the Lord said to Moses, go to Pharaoh and say to him, this is what the Lord, the God of the Hebrews, says. Interesting that we make that distinction now. Let my people go so that they may worship me. If you refuse to let them go and hold them back, the hand of the Lord, there's the hand.
Hold on. Hang on.
Yeah.
If you refuse to let them go, he's already said he will let them go.
Okay? Oh, yeah.
He's already said it, and now God's telling him to tell Pharaoh, if you refuse to let them go, as if God doesn't know this is what's going to happen.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. In fact, I have a note here. It says that the Pharaoh never resisted. So here we go. The hand of the Lord will bring a terrible plague on your livestock in the field, on your horses, donkeys, camels, and on your cattle, sheep, and goats. But the Lord will make a distinction between our livestock and your livestock. So no Israelite livestock will die.
So why do slaves have livestock to begin with?
I guess to feed themselves?
I mean, sure, but so this is getting a little bit spoilery for what's coming up, but at one point in the future, the Israelites are what's the word that's used, murmuring or grumbling against Moses, saying, why have you brought us out here to starve when we had all the food that we wanted in Egypt? So if they left and took they looted Egypt, according
Yeah.
to the scriptures, didn't they take their own livestock that survived this? If not, then it must have been the Egyptians' livestock that they were letting them eat. You know what I mean? You have to feed your slaves, obviously, but I don't know, it just doesn't line up.
Interesting. That's a good point. So are you saying that they must have taken their livestock with them when they left?
If they had livestock and they looted Egypt,
Right.
you
How are they
take
gonna
your own
carry all that?
livestock.
Yeah. That's a good point. I forgot about the whole silver and gold thing. They take all the Egyptian silver and gold.
Yeah, it
Or not
doesn't
all, but
specify weapons, but it also kind of talks about them leaving in a militaristic style, like they're ready
they
to
said they're
fight.
left ready for war.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you have to leave in a hurry, and that's why you don't have leavened bread and all this stuff, then you wouldn't have taken the livestock. But if it's your livestock and you're looting Egypt and they're giving you all this stuff and they're letting you go, you think you would take your livestock?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's something to think about. Because I would have assumed that they left in a hurry. They left so fast that they ate with their sandals on, and yet they also left time to take all the spoils of war there. So the plague is in fact inflicted on them. The next day, the Lord set a time and said, "Tomorrow the Lord will do this in the land. They will kill all the camels and cattle and sheep and goats, and all the livestock of the Egyptians died, but not one animal belonging to the Israelites died." Pharaoh investigated. He went to good.
Well, so did Pharaoh turn around and refuse to let him go? Did I miss that?
Nope. So never does it say that the Pharaoh resisted. God just does it. Hey, if you don't let him go, we're gonna do this plague. And Pharaoh's like, and he's like, boom, all the livestock die. Yeah, he got no chance here. Like the Egyptians. It's not just Pharaoh. So that's the other thing. I feel like at this point, well, not necessarily at this point, the Pharaoh's already admitted that he knows something else is happening. Now God is letting the Egyptians know, hey, there's this bigger power, and your Pharaoh is powerless to stop it. They have no power over this. So
but don't you think once all of the water was red, was blood, they would have an inkling at least?
Yes, I definitely do. Like this isn't the first crazy thing that's happened to them, but it's now we're starting to see that as they continue to grow and scale, that the Pharaoh can't do anything about it, and the Pharaoh will have no explanation for why these things are happening. Why can't I do? Like, why can't I help? And they're like, you're not even given a chance now. You had your chance. Now you're just gonna take it.
You had your chance, but you didn't have a chance because
especially in this case.
Yeah.
And you're right. And he did just say, you can go, just don't go too far. And they're like, ouch. We'll be right back. God's calling. He's got something wild. So anyway, this time his heart's unyielding.
Crazy stuff.
Yeah. This time in the NIV, it says that his heart was unyielding. However, in the NASB, it said that his heart was hardened again. So I wonder what the distinction is. I don't know why they did that in the NIV, but either way, the Pharaoh himself is still not convinced. This is such a weird plague. He didn't get a chance to resist. In the previous one, there was no warning. There was no, what'd you think of that plague? The gnats just happened. Then the livestock happens, and the Pharaoh's he's given a warning, but no chance to, relent. And then at the end of all of that, he's just like, nope.
Okay.
Don't care.
So think about it in this perspective then. Moses comes to Pharaoh, you're Pharaoh. Moses comes to you and says, if you don't let us go, this is going to happen. Then it happens anyway. Why would you let them go at that point?
Right. No, yes, exactly. Yeah. So the unyielding is probably just like, what difference does it make if I say okay? Exactly? Yeah, exactly. I already said okay. It's like they're being kicked when they're down. So now there's a plague of boils a coming. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron, take handfuls of soot from a furnace and have Moses toss it up in the air. See, now Moses gets to do the physical stuff. He gets to do the magic.
Aaron's back now.
Yeah, exactly. Toss it in the air in the presence of Pharaoh. It will become fine dust. Hey, Pharaoh, over here! Become fine dust over the whole land of Egypt, and festering boils will break out on people and animals throughout the land.
So did God save the Hebrews from that?
It does say throughout the land. It does not say anything about that, so I guess the Hebrews got boils.
And what animals?
Yeah, what does it say? Just the animals? On people and animals throughout the land. Maybe it's not everyone. Maybe it's not all the people. It could just be that it's not all the people. But it's definitely his magicians.
Okay, but what animals though? Oh, I thought all the animals died.
I see what you're saying. Yes. Yeah, all the livestock died. So maybe frogs, cats. There's a lot of cats there.
Yeah, I guess that
So
stuff.
yeah, but
Sure.
that's a good point. They're wondering why Fluffy is covered in boils. Like, oh god. So the magicians were so covered in boils that they couldn't even stand before Moses. And it says it's on all the Egyptians. So there you
Hmm.
go. It's on all the Egyptians, not the Israelites.
I mean, that's kind of a passive. It's not saying that he spared them. It's you have to infer it, I guess.
We're gonna say here that I'm gonna say here that it's only on the things that it literally says it's on. It's on people and all the Egyptians. So this time the Lord hardens Pharaoh's heart. So this is the sixth plague. So it took him 6 plagues for the Lord. So there you go. At this point, the Pharaoh's willing to let it go. He's like, all right, I've had it, and now the Lord has to step in and say, no, man,
Well, I mean, it says a couple of times that the Lord hardened his heart.
not yet.
Yeah.
Where?
Okay, hang on. Give me a sec.
This is the first time I have the note I have here is that this is the first time God stepped in and hardened Pharaoh's heart. He did predict that he would have to.
Give me a second.
Sure. Let me go silent first so I can cough. So previously you have Pharaoh's heart became hard, Pharaoh's heart, all these other things with no one giving credit for why the heart was hard. But this, we finally have Pharaoh or the Lord hardening Pharaoh's heart. And I wonder if you might be onto something with that last bit, after that last plague, saying that now it's like a pugilist and Pharaoh's got his back against the ropes and God's just like, get up, man, you can do this, like you got this. Don't quit now, he's like bullying the Pharaoh at this point.
I guess you're right. I swear I thought it said that before. I mean, we get at the very beginning that God said he will in his heart, but I swear I thought that there was at least one other instance.
Pharaoh's had enough. He's already, since he said that, 3 plagues have been inflicted on him, and now he's not able to say no or say yes. He can't.
Right.
God's like, no, you had your chances. Now you're going to sit there and you're going to take it.
Well, but he did say yes.
Right. But like I said, Moses like, shh. What was that? Pharaoh's like, I said yes. And Moses is like, how's that now? No? Okay. I'll tell him we said no. Pharaoh's like, no. So now we're gonna get some good stuff here. The plague of hail. The Lord said to Moses, get up early in the morning and confront Pharaoh and say to him, this is what the Lord, the God of the Hebrews, says. He's like just kind of needling him. This is what the God of the Hebrews says. We have a God, and this is like, you're going to know his name. Let my people go so that they may worship me, or this time I will send the full force of my plagues against you and your officials and all of your people, so you may know there's no one like me in all the earth. For by now I could have... Go ahead.
It is turning all of the blood, I mean, is that not the full force? Like, it seems like it's a sufficient force. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
So this is where God essentially admits right here that he's interfering. He says, I could have stretched my hand out and struck you with a plague that would have wiped you off the earth, but I raised you up for this very purpose, that I might show you my power and that my name might be proclaimed in all the earth.
Is raising your hand and wiping all the Egyptians off the face of the earth not the full force?
Yeah, you think. Exactly. Yeah, I don't know why he wouldn't. There was just so many things that could have been done. You could have done anything. Pharaoh's like, kill that magician. He's like, sir, and like Moses does his thing. The guy dies or whatever, and he's like, okay, yeah, y'all go ahead, go worship. That's fine. Yeah, I've raised you up for this very purpose, so that everyone can see my might. You still set yourself against my people and will not let them go. And again, he's not given a choice. He's like,
yeah.
Therefore, at this time tomorrow, I will send the worst hailstorm that has ever fallen on Egypt. At this point, why couldn't Pharaoh be like, no, it's fine.
Yeah,
go.
Yeah.
And now, okay, here's where it gets interesting. Give an order now to bring your livestock and everything you have in the field to a place of shelter. And Pharaoh's like, done.
What do you mean done? There are no livestock.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Pharaoh's like, okay, well, let me just go do that. So, okay. So bring your livestock to...
Sorry, I just want to interject here. We're laughing. We have no, kind of don't have a choice. It's in our nature to joke about stuff. We've done it since we were kids. We're not trying to piss anybody off. I mean, you have the right to be offended, but like, we're not trying to do that.
At least, I mean, before you get offended, just consider what we're saying. Like, this is silly. This is silly.
Yeah.
You know, like, give in order to bring your livestock and everything you have in the field to a place of shelter, because the hail will fall on every person and animal that's not been brought in and is still out in the field, and they will die. Yeah, and at this point, Pharaoh's like, oh, okay, sure, let me go. I'll go do that.
Yeah, I just want to specify that we are laughing, but like, we are taking this seriously. We're not, we're not being flippant about it.
Yeah. The officials of Pharaoh who feared the word of the Lord hurried to bring their slaves and livestock inside. Those who ignored the word of the Lord left their slaves and livestock in the field. So, okay, people are going to die. Like, God's not just going to kill whatever lives, like, fine, there's still livestock, whatever. But now humans are going to die. People who are being oppressed. That's the whole point of this whole freaking book right now, is to free and deliver oppressed people. Granted, they're God's chosen people. They have this covenantal relationship, many of whom have no freaking clue what is even what it has to do with. Like, they're going to be surprised that they have to get circumcised. Like, what? And yet here we have.
Well, I would assume, especially given the Moses and his wife thing, where he's almost killed and she saves the day by circumcising his son. You'd assume Moses is already circumcised. They're all probably, they may not know why they're being circumcised, but it's their tradition,
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at. Like, some of them might, I think that maybe coming up later, or maybe it's in some Parshat thing that I read that said that some of these people are learning of the covenant for the first time, and to me that means that they haven't been circumcised. That's how I figured it.
They might have been circumcised and just not know.
Just did not know why. Okay, that's fair. But anyway, these are all people who are in their mind. So again, we're talking about 20 generations after Joseph, who they're just slaves. They're born into slavery. They have no idea what, like, any
20
other
generations. Where'd you get 20 generations?
Oh no, I'm not. That's not a real number. I'm taking 40 and dividing it by 20, or 400 and dividing it by 20. Yeah, sorry, I shouldn't speak so callously. But these slaves, these other slaves, are probably they're in the same boat as the Hebrews, as the Israelites. They have no idea. Like, they're just slaves to this Pharaoh, and yet they're going to be left out in the field to die. And God's just like, yeah, man, like, I could be as precise as I want to be with this other stuff, but I'm going to kill the slaves. Anyway, so the Lord said to Moses, stretch your hand toward the sky so that hail will fall over Egypt. And people, we're at 22, by the way.
Right. So now he's not saying, well, Aaron, he's not telling Moses to tell Aaron to do stuff now. He's telling Moses directly to do stuff.
Right. Yeah. So in the last, I think two plagues ago, we got Moses finally taking part in the physical ritual.
Right. Yeah.
And now it's just like, all right, Moses is on you. So keep that in mind too. And I'm not sure if this will go back, if this will revert. Moses is kind of growing into his own here as well. God is kind of like, he's doing multiple things at once with this one set of wonders. He's impressing the Pharaoh, impressing the Egyptians, kind of half-ass impressing the Israelites, not too much at least, but he's also helping Moses grow as a person. All these things that he thought that he wasn't capable of, he's showing him, no, you can and will do these things. You're going to be my scepter, basically.
But again, yes, I agree, but it's also reading into it, because
100%.
There's none of this exposition.
No, you're absolutely right. This is I'm trying to give this as much credit as possible.
Right.
At least I'm also highlighting some of the things that I personally find interesting. Like, this is neat stuff.
It is. Yeah.
So the only place it didn't hail was in the land of Goshen, where the Israelites were. So I want to talk really quick about the hail itself. Did you read anything about the hail, or do you understand it to just be regular old hail, like just ice from the sky?
So what I've read here is, just ice, but I have heard in the past that it would be fire and ice.
Fire inside of ice.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to read this bit from let me find it, from the Hebrew Old Testament.
The Catholic version has lightning, not fire.
Yep.
So
very interesting. I guess, well, in that case, I don't really have to. Okay. This is Exodus 24. Exodus, where are we? 9. Exodus 9:24 from the Hebrew the Hebrew Bible. And there was hail and fire flaming within the hail, very heavy, the likes of which had never been throughout the entire land of Egypt since it had become a nation. So what Foreman said was that this is God demonstrating to all of the people that he has the power, God has the power to combine powers that their pantheon never could. Like, you have your ice god, you have your fire god. If they were going to do anything, it would be fight. That's why you never see the two things together. But here we are combining those two things, these two impossible things, and it's supposed to represent this like amazing miracle unto itself.
I mean, sure, if you're taking this as scripture and everything else, and you're trying to determine why, sure, but like the lightning seems more plausible to me in general, but also from what I understand, what I've read, what I've learned from other people who have done things and put out videos on it and stuff. Yahweh was a storm god, so this is not necessarily what two gods would do combined. This is very much something storms bring: hail and lightning, and lightning setting fires in the midst of the rain and the hail. It doesn't seem a stretch to me that a single god could have done that.
Yeah, definitely. You're right. That's what's interesting. You just reminded me that Yahweh was a storm god, and it's interesting to think that it's almost like he's like, all right, here comes the good stuff. Like, this is the stuff he knows. He's like, I can make some wild hail, you guys. Like, and so, yeah, that's a fun thought. Where have I gone? I kind of wandered off a little bit. Here we go.
25.
So, what's that?
We're at 25.
25. Okay.
That's where you left off.
Okay. So throughout Egypt, hail struck everything in the fields, both people and animals. It beat down everything growing in the fields and stripped every tree. So now we have no livestock, nothing growing in the fields. Water's dirty. Ovens are full of frogs and flies. So, except the only place it didn't hail was Goshen. And the Pharaoh, again, he probably didn't go check. We just have to be told this. It's not like the Pharaoh knew that was the case. But anyway, he doesn't have to know this before he summons Moses and Aaron and says, okay, I've sinned. I have done wrong. I admit that. The Lord's in the right and my people are in the wrong. He is throwing his people under the bus. He's basically saying the Egyptians. He doesn't take personal responsibility for the decisions that he's made that have led us to this point.
Right. But so God is now releasing his grip on Pharaoh's heart? You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. So I feel like, I wonder if every time Pharaoh hardens, or God hardens Pharaoh's heart, it's just enough to get him over that hump. Just enough to say, all right, whatever it's going to take to get you to just keep going. I want you to stand up and take this. I want you to be present for this. I want you to watch the atrocities that I'm committing against you and your people.
Sure. But like, I don't know. It's like, if that's the case, he's hardening his heart. Watch this. Watch my amazing power. I'm subjecting you to this. And then what are you going to do now?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to let him go. No, you're not.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, exactly.
I didn't hear no bell.
Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Or whatever Malcolm McDowell's eyes are being like held open and no, that's God. That's God hardening his heart,
Real horror show.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, look, his entire land is completely destroyed in the whole time. Okay, so
killed all the livestock twice.
He double killed the livestock and the slaves. My goodness. So pray the Lord. We
Overkill.
Exactly. Sorry. So the Pharaoh said, I've sinned. Please take away this thunder and hail. I'll let you go. You don't have to stay longer. And Moses replied, when I've gone out of the city, I will spread my hands in prayer to the Lord. The thunder will stop and there will be no more hail. So you may know that the earth is the Lord's. Now, let's take a look real quick in 29 on the NASB here, because the thunder will cease. Why is that? Why is thunder so ominous to them? Why do they care about the thunder? Is that a big deal?
I don't know. Maybe it's just a portent of of what's going to come, the hail and whatnot. So if the thunder stops, then that means the storm is ending, I guess.
Mm-hmm. And it says that he continuously has to leave the city to pray because, well, it says Rashi says that the reason why he's always having to leave these cities to pray is because the city's full of idols. He's not allowed to pray there. Couldn't hear him. I don't know.
I kind of like the idea of him leaving the city and this just being a circle of no hail and stuff following him as he leaves.
Or that he's just the only person that was smart enough to find a freaking bit of plywood. Just like ping, 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 you know? And then there's a little parenthetical for 31. Interestingly enough, the flax and barley were destroyed since the barley had headed and the flax was in bloom. The wheat and spelt, however, were not destroyed because they ripened later. So
But it says everything in the field was,
yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Struck everything in the fields, both people and animals, beat down everything, and stripped every tree, everything growing in the fields. So
yep.
I guess maybe later on they decided that, well, they're going to have something to eat at some point, so we'll give them this.
Yeah, that. So you shared with me that Logos Bible app, and they had a really interesting reference to that some other scripture that said that it comes back into play. I forget where. I want to say Isaiah, where they talk about the fact that wheat and spelt were available. Something I forget what it was because it was late in the season or something. I forget.
Yeah,
it was interesting. The link was interesting to the other scripture because it was kind of neat. They were able to tie it back in. Mm-hmm. So Moses left Pharaoh and went out of the city. He spread his hands towards the Lord. The thunder and hail stopped, and the rain no longer poured down on the land. When Pharaoh saw that the rain and hail and thunder had stopped, he sinned again. He and his officials hardened their hearts. So Pharaoh's heart was hard, and he would not let the Israelites go, just as the Lord had said through Moses.
So, just an interesting thought. He raised his hands toward God. So we have this idea of God having a presence and having footprints and all this stuff in the past, and in the future he's going to have a footstool, which is the ark, and they're going to carry him into battle and all this kind of stuff. Is he just raising his hands to the sky, or does he have an idea of where God is, and so he's aligning? I don't know. It kind of the Muslims pray toward Mecca, or is it Mecca or is it somewhere else?
No, that's right. It's Mecca.
Align. Anyway, point is, is it a similar thing like that? Is there a place that he knows? Is there a direction that he's I don't know.
That's a cool thought. I wonder, because later, whenever the Exodus is really in full force, whenever they're trying to get their crap and go, an angel of the Lord leads them out or walks ahead of them. An angel of the Lord gives them a symbol, and but then and later in that same chapter, they mention that the angel is the Lord. And so it's almost as if there is like some sort of like physical, tangible thing to which you can assume, or to which you can ascribe like lordly qualities, Yahweh-ish qualities, and like pray to that thing, or speak to that thing. So that's a very good point. I wonder if there is just like a pillar of clouds, like there is later.
Would it have mattered to them? You know what I mean? Do they have this conception of God as being everywhere, but could manifest, or is it not a being, a physical being?
Well, so they don't really go in. They didn't get into that much in Genesis. In fact, every time God appeared, every time God was, brought into the story, it was as some physical thing, some sort of manifestation of a thing that the person would understand. Then that's where the whole kind of idea changes here in Exodus, when God said he does the whole Yahweh thing, like I am I'm eternal. I am the one who is, was, and always will be. That concept is the one that's fresh and new. Like I'm an eternal everywhere God. And so now, even though Moses has known this God for 40 years or so, I wonder if that whole concept has sunk into him, because the only God he would have known prior to that would be one that you have to go find, like looking under rocks. Now,
but even in Genesis, people go and seek Yahweh and to speak to him. So,
right. No, and that's the kind of God Moses would have known before he appeared as a burning bush and let him know his name. That's another interesting thing. Like, here I am in a physical manifestation of a thing, but also I'm eternal and everywhere and forever. It's almost, why wouldn't the bush like disappear to demonstrate that? Like, you still hear me, and also put your shoes back on. This is no longer holy ground.
Yeah.
It's, I don't know. Man. I appreciate you thinking like this, because these aren't things I'm considering just reading the text and the companion text I'm reading.
It's funny. I'm studying this a whole lot more seriously than I did when I was a Christian.
Yeah, I've gotten that feedback from people. People are like, "You're reading you've done more reading of the Bible than Christians do," and like, well, maybe. I don't know what that means necessarily. You and I look for, whenever dogma is not involved, it becomes a lot more interesting to me. Whenever you
Yeah,
just don't believe things because.
yeah, it kind of is. Like, you know, the main reason I said in the past that the main reason I'm not a believer is just because I'm not convinced. That's the basics of it. But like, to get more specific, the reason I stopped believing in the first place is like I was reading it and I was trying to be a better person. You know, I was trying to use Christianity, the word and everything, to be better because I felt like I wasn't a good person or whatever. And then my morality, what I felt was good, what I was striving to be better, the things, the that kind of stuff doesn't mesh with the Bible. You know what I mean? Like the morality of the Bible is very different to the morality that I was striving towards, you know.
Mhm.
And that's kind of the straw that broke the camel's back in the.
Can you tell me what the morality of the Bible means to you? What that is to you?
But just the moral prescriptions against homosexuality and, you know, all these other things. Like at the time I was kind of convinced homosexuality was bad, but it was essentially based on being a Christian. And then, you know, once I stopped being a Christian, I lost that. But there are other things, you know, just you know, the deception and the killings, and even in the New Testament, you know, you get slavery and all this, and women are not equal to men and everything, and it just, you know, didn't line up. And you could say that this is a different time, and that's for that, and this different, you know, but you know, you can't really do that and take the Bible seriously in any way other than like the kind of Jewish perspective of these are, you know, ideas that you should use to help find your way rather than this is the way. You know what I mean?
Do you think it's a prominent idea within Christianity to have such a literal interpretation of the Bible, such that you want to be the living embodiment of the Scripture?
I don't know that it is globally necessarily, but you know, I was raised originally Baptist, and then I kind of fell in with some of my other friends who had like I know I had a Pentecost friend. I went to church with him one time. It wasn't exactly for me, but you know, talking with him and other people with these other denominations, you know, kind of gave me an idea of what all was going on, and it was all very kind of an evangelical thing where it literal, you know, fundamentalism and Bible literacy, or literal
Literalism?
biblical literalism are kind of very pervasive and all of that. And so that's the worldview that I was trying to incorporate into my own and use to become a better person and stuff, and it just didn't mesh.
Okay. Would you, now that you've had time since then, and you know you're kind of like re-encountering and you know you're coming to the Bible rather than kind of like feeling the effects of it being kind of like societally forced on you.
Mm-hmm.
Are you willing to be a little bit more charitable in assuming that maybe that since not all Christians are like that, then that there might be something um that there might be something to the book that doesn't have to be such a literal encapsulation or whatever, like that it could
Yes and
still
no.
serve a okay.
So originally, you know, I was against it. It was because again, I was this, you know, fundamentalist kind of style of reading it or whatever, and I was against that, and I still am. I don't think that's appropriate, and I think it drives you in the wrong, you know, area. You're making the world worse by doing this. Um, I have softened on that. Like if you don't take it literally and you use it as a guide to, you know, you pick and choose the things to help you, then sure, that's fine. I don't think it's necessarily right, but I'm not gonna tell you you're wrong to do it or that it's wrong in general. You know what I mean? But I don't think that there's any real wisdom in it that can't be found elsewhere.
Hmm. Okay. Okay. That's very fair. All right. Well, I mean, what do you think about moving on to the plague of locusts? Is there anything else you want to
Yeah.
talk about when it comes to?
No, no, and we don't even have to include that necessarily if you don't
Well, it's
want
fun.
to. But
No, I like it. If you don't mind, I wouldn't mind having
no,
it
no,
on.
I don't mind at all.
Let's see. I don't believe just because I can't afford to go to church. It's too expensive. Let's see. Let's see. Where are we? Right here. Plague of locusts. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Go to Pharaoh, for okay, that's what I forgot. The Pharaoh didn't harden. The Pharaoh and his officials didn't harden their hearts. The Lord did.
Mm-hmm.
He blames them for having hardened their hearts in at the end of the previous chapter, but he literally says the Pharaoh's heart was hard, and he okay, hold on. Where were we? I thought we had the officials also hardening their hearts here. I guess
They
not.
did at the end of 9.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, so
So
anyway,
it makes me wonder if, the redactors afterwards changed it to kind of soften the position on some of it, but maybe they couldn't for the older stuff. I don't know.
yeah,
I don't know
I mean,
how it all hit. But
if I was gonna look at if I was gonna do like a biblical, like an archaeological version of like what's going on here, I wouldn't know. Like, have you ever seen the Bible that literally has the different colored text for the different sources? So it'll have like green text for the
I,
redactors.
I've seen it online. I haven't actually, read any of it.
I think that would be interesting just to see,
It
like, you can feel the stitching on this, but to see it would be very cool, I think.
yeah, I would
Um,
definitely. I might have to look into that.
I would own it if I saw it at a used bookstore. Okay, so the Lord said to Moses, go to Pharaoh. I have hardened his heart and the hearts of his officials so that I may perform these signs of mine among them, that you may tell your children and grandchildren how I dealt harshly with the Egyptians and how I performed my signs among them, and that you may know I am the Lord. So,
So why do they have to be harsh on the Egyptians and not just the royal court? The people in charge. Why do the rank and file people that have really nothing to do with it? They might have, they might be racist toward the Hebrews. They might, shun them or whatever. But why do they need to be punished as well?
yeah, I mean, so you can be mad that someone doesn't believe in you. That's your God. You have that right or whatever. But you can't punish those people who all they've done so far is suffer. You've only made them suffer. They've lost everything pretty much. And now you're saying that we're gonna, I really couldn't tell you. Especially when we know that they eventually start to not revolt, but like they start to like beg the Pharaoh, like, hey man, this sucks. Please help us. Like, stop doing what you're doing. Like, let's just let them go. But we also are, this is the first instance of God kind of revealing that the story, like, we're increasing scope because we want everyone to know about it. We want this to be a legend that's told forever.
Right.
And so we haven't even made it to the end yet. And we're already getting this version of, this is a story that is going to be, in 2024, 2 atheists are going to be on the internet talking about it.
Yeah.
So Moses and Aaron went to the Pharaoh and said to him, this is what the Lord, the God of the Hebrews, said.
Now,
How long? Good.
Why is it now being told in this way, where God doesn't tell Moses to tell Pharaoh? Moses goes and says, "This is what God wants." You know what I mean?
Well, no. Let's see.
So it's a different narrative style. Before, God is saying, "Moses, go to Pharaoh and tell him this," and then Moses goes to Pharaoh and tells him.
Oh,
now it's just Moses going saying, "This is what God told me."
Right. No. So that's a great point. I think it's part of Moses' transition into a leader. He was reluctant at first. He didn't want to do that, and he doesn't know it yet. But he's going to be the one that literally leads them out of Egypt. So God is like kind of prodding him here at the beginning of 10 in verses 1 and 2. He's saying, let Pharaoh know that these signs and wonders have to do with the eternity of the story that I want to have told. And then 3, Moses walks in like, Conor McGregor struts in there. He's like, hey, he's like, what the hell? And he's speaking for himself now.
Yeah, could be.
Well, that's what it says. No, I'm just saying. It doesn't say that.
I know. The way I kind of saw it originally was just that, sorry, I lost my train of thought. It's almost like the text is trying to prove something by having this is what God wants, and this is how it's transpiring. And now you don't have that. It's almost like, when a pastor says, God wants me to do this. God says, if I don't get enough money to get a plane, that kind of thing. I'm not saying that's what it is, but it's kind of what it feels like. There's less, I don't want to say proof, but like, it just seems a little less real, almost.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Your perspective on it seems probably more right, but
who's to say? Who's to say like what the narrative intention is here? But that's kind of how it reads to me. If I was going to give this as much credit as I can, it's that we're building this legend, and like there is an arc to this.
Yeah, there definitely is. Yeah, you're right.
So he says to the Lord here, he says to the Pharaoh, how long are you going to refuse to humble yourself before me? So says the God of the Hebrews.
But he's already done that. He's like a couple of times now.
Right. And yeah, you can almost wonder, you almost imagine the Pharaoh being like, what are you talking about? Like, let me die. Okay. If you refuse to let them go, I will bring locusts into your country tomorrow. Okay. So let's see. Let's see what the Pharaoh has to say. They'll cover the face of the ground so that it cannot be seen. They will devour what little you have left after the hail, including every tree that's growing in your fields. They will fill your houses and those of your officials and all the Egyptians.
Now, I wonder if that's why they had to insert the parenthetical. There's stuff left.
Yep. Good call. Great catch. They will fill your houses and all of the officials of the Egyptians, something neither your parents nor your ancestors have ever seen from the day they settled this land. So what's the word for when you have to, like, they're over expositing here? It's like you're letting the reader know, like, okay, I get it. This is the type of thing that's never been seen before. It just seems very out of place in this little monologue he's having.
Could you imagine going to someone and being like, this is going to happen, the likes of which have never been seen? It's like, okay, dude. Yeah.
Yeah. Especially after all of these other things, the likes of which have never been seen.
Exactly.
The Egyptians have a written record. The Hebrews don't.
If you think about it, like a fashion show or something, and each model comes out, you're about to see a dress the likes of which have never been seen. Now this one too, also. Yeah. Likes of which have never been seen.
Yeah. They only get more and more insane. Moses turned and left the Pharaoh. The Pharaoh's official said to him, "How long will this man be a snare to us? Let the people go so they may worship their God. Do you not yet realize that Egypt is ruined?" And Moses and Aaron were brought back and said, "Go worship your Lord, but tell me who is going." So a completely reasonable response. I just want to know who's going. Okay. Moses said, "We'll go with our young and our old, our sons and our daughters, with our flocks and our herds, because we are to celebrate the festival of the Lord." Isn't that the same as saying everything is going? We're taking everything? I wonder why they didn't. Pharaoh said, "The Lord be with you. If I let you go along with your women and children, clearly you're bent on evil. No. Have only the men go and worship the Lord, since that's what you've been asking for." Then Moses and Aaron were driven out of the Pharaoh's presence. Two things. The Pharaoh's request is completely reasonable. Moses is still lying. He's still lying. Yeah. And the Pharaoh sees through his deceit. He's like, you guys are trying to escape. And he doesn't say that, but he's like, you guys are bent on evil. What other evil could it be besides escape? The Pharaoh already knows that the path leading back to Canaan. Now, again, he doesn't know where they're going, granted. But the path out of Goshen is lined with Philistines. There are Egyptian armies and battle stations the entire way out.
And other nation states or whatever that are paying tribute to Egypt and, have alliances, for defense and things like this.
Right. Yeah. So the only evil he could possibly have the only evil that you would think that he would have on his mind would be escape. Especially whenever Moses is like, well, if we're going to worship the Lord, we got to do it with all of our stuff. It's like,
yeah, exactly.
Pharaoh's like, bro, look, I'm going to give you what you asked for. He's literally saying, I'm going to give you what you asked for.
Right.
Now what? And Moses is like, you shouldn't have done that. Why? Okay, so.
Well, also, so think of it this way. The Pharaoh it's been demonstrated to him that all of these things can happen, and all the livestock have died a couple of times, and the rivers turned to blood and everything else. If the Israelites are trying to leave and take all of their stuff and their kids and everything else, he can expect the total destruction of Egypt. I mean, kind of, he's already been told, I could have wiped you out, but now I'm going to do something worse. But, you can kind of see it that way. If they're going, that leaves, Egypt vulnerable to this God.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And it's almost, I'm starting to get the sense that Pharaoh is flabbergasted that a God would be willing to visit this kind of destruction on a people. Is like, what else could you possibly do? In like locusts. Okay, man, like we're eating dirt, but sure, locusts kill our spelt wheat.
Yeah. He's talking about evil purpose and stuff. Like, what kind of God? You're an Egyptian, you've got this pantheon or whatever, and you've got your, whatever it is. What kind of God is going to be willing to do this but an evil God?
Yeah, that's true. All this God has done is destroy.
Gets into the Gnostic position later on, but looking at it from Pharaoh's perspective, that's all you can see, really.
Imagine God that was willing to ply you with positive reinforcement. It's like, oh, your God's so powerful. How come he doesn't produce a gold brick in my hand? Like, blink. Okay, how about 2 gold bricks? And then it happens again.
Couldn't God have purchased the slaves?
Oh my God, exactly. How much? Like, what's your price? And Pharaoh's like, $1 million. Like, why not? Yeah, exactly. Why not? And so instead, we get a God that's like, watch how much of your stuff I can tear up. It's like you're throwing a tantrum. Like, that's not. And just like any parent, we want to let our children, tire themselves out. Like, you want to intervene before they break something important or hurt themselves, but go ahead and tire yourself out. And God's just like, I don't get tired, man. Like, I invented time, like, and so, yeah. And it just seems to me
I brought you into this world. I can take you out of it.
Not only that, but I want to take you out of it. It's like God is like, in this case, God's like, I want to kill everything. I want to destroy
it slow and painful.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. God had this.
We talked about it before. It's not redemption necessarily. It's retribution.
Yeah, you're right. It's almost God got if he hadn't told us at the beginning that he was going to harden Pharaoh's heart, I would almost get the feeling that he's kind of upset that Pharaoh would even dare challenge him.
Yeah.
But instead we get this thing where it's like Pharaoh's going to harden your heart, and Moses is kind of like, he's saying, I'm going to harden Pharaoh's heart, and Moses is like, you don't have to do that. Seems unnecessary. And God's like, no, that way you'll tell the story. He's like, well, if you turn the Nile into blood, I'll let everyone know. Instead he's like, no. He's like, quiet, Moses. I've got something going on. Daddy's thinking.
Yeah. And in all of this, the Egyptians didn't write anything down.
Yeah, that's true. That's one thing that I've noticed as I've tried to kind of compare this to current day or what exists to prove this. Literally nothing. We kind of have an idea of where Mount Sinai is, but it could be one of 3 places, and it's all within this 10,000 square mile triangle. Could be anywhere in here.
Mm-hmm.
You'd think that we don't know who the Pharaoh is. So, Lord said to Moses, let me make sure. Okay, so the Pharaoh cast them away, and they were like, "Look, you're lying to me. I've already said you could go, and now you're moving the goalposts. That's not what we agreed to. You can do the thing I said, or you can get out." Moses and the Lord said to Moses, "Stretch your hand out over Egypt so that locusts swarm over the land and everything growing in the fields and devour everything, everything left by the hail." Moses did that very thing, except it says for Moses to stretch his hand out over Egypt, but instead he stretches his staff. I don't know what to make of that, except it's right there. God said, stretch your hand out. Moses stretched his staff out. And the Lord made an east wind blow across the land all that day and all that night. I want to go back here really quick because I was listening to an old podcast you and I did, an old recording, and there was some confusion about which way an east wind is. So
right.
So an east wind comes from the east. Okay. It doesn't blow east. So this is the second instance of an east wind causing destruction, but it's not the last. This is going to be a continued theme I've read whenever I looked up east wind in the Bible. Typically, whenever there's an east wind, it has to do with suffering, pestilence, drought, famine, all these things. That's what east winds are meant to intone, whereas west winds are healing, furtive, things like that.
So isn't it an east wind that parts the Red Sea?
Yep. But is it an east wind that parts the Red Sea, or is it an east wind that closes? I can't remember. But there is destruction involved with parting the sea. That could be part of it. Also, the wind that parts the sea has the same Hebrew root as the breath that God breathed in creation. It's that ruach.
But what I was getting at though is if it is an east wind, wouldn't the Israelites be reluctant to cross?
Yeah, you did. Oh no, that's not good. That's that locust wind. Yeah, and so the east wind blew across the sea all night and day, and it brought the locusts that invaded Egypt and settled down in every area of the country in great numbers. Never before had there been seen such a plague of locusts, nor will there ever be again.
And everybody clapped.
They covered the ground until it was black. They devoured all that was left after the hail. And then it continued.
So, what about Goshen? Was it spared?
Pharaoh, let's see. Does not say, does it? It says all of Egypt.
I don't think
nothing green remained on tree or plant in all the land of Egypt. Let's go ahead and say that no. Why not? Goshen was not spared.
So what about their lives? I guess that's why they don't take their livestock with them when they leave.
They had nothing to eat.
Yeah, they had nothing to eat, so they all died.
Yeah, I don't know. Good question.
That seems messed up. You're gonna spare the the Hebrews' livestock and stuff, and then kill them.
Well,
I
they
mean, obviously
definitely
that's
had.
reading into it, but
They're definitely going to have enough livestock for the Passover, and they couldn't have been weak unfed livestock because they had to be like the choicest. The lamb had to be the choicest lamb, healthy and without defect or whatever. Okay, so Pharaoh quickly summoned Moses and Aaron and said, "I've sinned against your Lord and against you. Forgive my sin once more and pray to the Lord to take this deadly plague away from me." And maybe I'm not sure. I haven't noticed this, but he says, "Pray to the Lord your God." He's giving them he's fully understanding that, like, what's at play.
right.
This is your.
Well, I mean, but he's already been there.
Yeah,
with
that's
the
true.
with the other plagues.
That's true. So 10:16, Pharaoh quickly summoned Moses and Aaron and said, "I have sinned against the Lord and against you. Forgive my sin once more and pray to your Lord to take this deadly plague away from me." And Moses left Pharaoh and prayed to the Lord, and the Lord changed the wind to a west wind, which caught up the locusts and carried them into the Red Sea. Not a locust was left anywhere in Egypt, but the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart, and he would not let the Israelites go. So the Lord said to Moses, "Stretch your hand towards the sky so that darkness spreads over Egypt and so that the darkness can be felt." Moses did that very thing, and total darkness covered all of Egypt for 3 days. No one could see anyone. No one could see anyone else or move about for 3 days. Yet all the Israelites had light in the places where they lived. I'm assuming that. I mean, that's magic.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, so anyway, the Pharaoh summoned Moses and said, "Go, worship the Lord. Even your women and children may go with you. Only leave your flocks and herds behind." So is this just like a weak way of elevating the push and pull here? Just like,
I think it's got to be, Pharaoh losing his grip, kind of.
Moses said, "But you have to let us take sacrifices for burnt offerings to present to our Lord. Our livestock too must go with us. Not a hoof is to be left behind. We have to use some of them in worshiping, and because we don't know what God's going to want when we get there. So they got to take all their sheep, like,
yeah,
couldn't just take one or two."
Yeah, but I don't know. It's so contrived. And then again, he's bargaining to try to take these livestock with them, and then when they do leave, they suddenly have no livestock.
Right. Yep, that's true. And then Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart and was not willing to let them go. He said, "Get out of my sight. Do not appear before me again. The day you see my face, you'll die." And Moses said, "Just as you say, I will never appear before you again." I just want to offer a quick little side note. I'm also listening to the NIV on Audible, and I don't know the name of the actor. I should have looked that up, but he is so good. He'll put all this emotion. He'll say, like, "Get out of my sight. Make sure you do not appear before me again. The day you see my face, you will die." And then Moses is like all sad about it. He goes, "Just as you say, I will never appear before you again." Like, he eats up that recording. It's like a 75-hour recording, and he really chews on it.
Another one, back in the day, I worked at a Christian bookstore, and we sold a CD set. It was James Earl Jones reading either. I don't know if it was King James or if it was New King James, but it's one of the two, and it was similar. It was so
theatrical.
His voice is bombastic and is brilliant.
Yeah,
it's great. I didn't buy it because it was too expensive, but I listened to some of it. It was good.
Books on CD were always so expensive. It doesn't make sense.
Well, and this one was 80 CDs or something. Probably not that many, but it was a bunch.
So I have a note here, and I'm just going to call this out. I could be wrong. The Lord says to Moses, "Don't ever see me again." And Moses says, "Get out of my sight. And the next time you see me, you're going to die." And Moses said, "Okay, I'll never see you again." And then I have a note here. He sees him immediately again in the next chapter. So let's see. Yeah. Let's see what kind of jerk I was being when I was making my notes. The Lord said to Moses, this is chapter 11. Mm-hmm. The Lord said to Moses, "I will bring one more plague on Pharaoh and on Egypt. After that, he will let you go from here. When he does, he'll drive you out completely. Tell the people that men and women are alike to go ask their neighbors for articles of silver and gold." The Lord made Egyptians favorably disposed towards the people, and Moses himself was highly regarded in Egypt by Pharaoh's officials and the people. So
suddenly people like them?
Well, we say suddenly. We've gotten any sort of look into the hearts of the people this entire
well, it says the Lord made them favorably disposed. So
yeah. Well, that's why I say I don't know about suddenly. I feel like it's over the course of these plagues. It's happened that the people are like they have kind of swung favor to their side over the Pharaoh, because all of the crap is being wrecked, and the Pharaoh's the reason why.
Well, but so how would that I mean, obviously the Israelites are being spared from some of this, but like, how would that be like change their opinion to, oh, these are good people? You know what I mean?
Stockholm syndrome, man. It's very strong.
I guess.
I was trying to think of a word, a city in Egypt that we've heard so far, but I couldn't think of it to call it blank syndrome. Goshen syndrome.
Goshen or Hebron. Is that
He,
that's not in Egypt?
um, Ramses.
Yeah.
Ramses
Hi,
syndrome.
Ramses.
Let's see. The Lord made the Egyptians favorably disposed. So, which I guess we need to know. We need to know that little parenthetical, because otherwise, what's about to happen is going to be like, what, why? Moses said. So Moses said, "This is what the Lord says: About midnight, I will go through Egypt. Every firstborn son in Egypt will die, from the firstborn son of Pharaoh who sits on the throne to the firstborn son of the female slave who is at her handmill, and the firstborn of the cattle as well." So the
So
cows are going to die.
the firstborn of the cattle are going to die for the third time now.
Yeah, dude. If there's any one thing that's been overlapped by all these plagues the most, it's the freaking cattle. Like those poor cattle. Even the people, they're just like, oh, my water, my oven is full of frogs. But now the cattle are like, okay, this God hates cows. What is happening? So there's going to be loud wailing all throughout Egypt, worse than has ever been or ever will be again. But among the Israelites, not a dog will bark at any person or animal, which is bad, because you need to know if someone's coming.
So, but here's the thing, though. Like it says, but among the Israelites, not a dog will bark at any man or animal. Then you will know that the Lord has made a distinction between Egypt and Israel. Like the fact that none of this stuff is happening to them and their firstborn are not going to die is not proof enough. The proof is that dogs will not bark at anybody.
I think that's just the end bit. It's almost like a kind of an anticlimactic way to end the sentence, but I think like all of those things are how you're going to know that Israel's favorably disposed. I mean, but
sure. And me like, being a little flippant, but like,
yeah, everyone's going to die, including the cattle. But wait till you see what the dogs do. Nothing. It's going to be wild. You're going to be like, hello, puppy, and they're going to be like, mm-mm. No.
Yeah, are the firstborn dogs going to die too?
I hope not. That'd be terrible. But you know what I also realized? Did Egyptian kings back then follow a, what's the word, patrilineal firstborn sort of thing? Like, would the Pharaoh have been firstborn?
Yeah, I believe that's the way it would have worked. I mean, I know there's a lot of different eras. Ancient Egypt spanned so much time that we can't.
It's like 50 years.
I don't have the knowledge to say, like, the Egyptians worship cats. Well, did they do that the entire time or just for this part or whatever? But one of the things that I think is funny is, speaking of cats, that Exodus book was talking about how, somebody had to have had knowledge of Egypt to do this or whatever. There's no mention of cats anywhere.
Yeah.
Even if it was the old Egypt that, had this, the cat thing. I don't know to what extent cats worshipped or whatever, but like cats were a prominent thing. I've heard that cats might have been domesticated in Egypt, and none of this ever has any mention of cats anywhere. It seems a little odd.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. Yeah, so it struck me. I wondered if the Pharaoh was immune, because we get to see his reaction to this plague. Among the Israelites, not a dog will bark at any person or animal. Then you'll know that the Lord makes a distinction between Egypt and Israel. So taken out of context, that is pretty funny. All these officials of the earth will come to me, bowing down before me, and say, "Go, you and all the people who follow you. After that, I will leave." Then Moses, hot with anger, left Pharaoh. So yes, Moses is in Pharaoh's presence. What the heck? Like, what happened? Like, why are you content? Why, if you're the author, redactor, editor, believer, and all of this stuff, why are you okay with the previous verse saying that and then this happening? This happens so many times.
Yeah.
Like, at the very least, we need to be questioning what to make of that. If nothing else, what does that mean? You'll never see me. The next time you see me, you'll die. Like, maybe that's it. Maybe just to prove Pharaoh wrong.
I mean, maybe it could have also just been a threat that didn't get followed up on because God's in control of Pharaoh. You know what I mean? Like, it couldn't have, it may not have been 100%, I'm going to have you killed. It could have just been like, go away, or I will have you killed, but it just been maybe an idle threat, or just if he's pissed off, you just say something in the heat of the moment. Kind of came
Mhm.
out that way. I
Hmm.
don't know. I mean, obviously it was said and it didn't happen, so there is that. But
But
you
also
know,
Moses said, okay, fine, you'll never see me again.
exactly. Yeah.
Okay. The Lord said to Moses, Pharaoh will refuse to listen to you so that my wonders may be multiplied in Egypt. Moses and Aaron performed all these wonders before Pharaoh, but the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart, and he would not let the Israelites go out of his country.
Mm-hmm.
So the wonders that we're talking about are still to come. So at the beginning of chapter 12, we kind of get this kind of inextricable in this final plague is the Passover. And the Passover is such a large topic that we were kind of wanting to give it its own space to breathe. So I figure for right now, let's go through just kind of like give some of the basics of what's happening before the plague actually takes place. And then we'll go back into the actual delineation of the Passover rules and restrictions whenever we do the Passover proper. So basically, before the plague can be visited on the Egyptians, the Lord has to give the Israelites their instructions. Like, here's what's going to happen because all of this is going to happen really fast. You need to eat and you need to get ready because you're about to have to leave. And the Israelites are like, okay, gotcha. God's like, listen to me. Just do what I say. So get your lamb. We'll go over what kind of lamb later. Get your lamb, slit its throat, spread its blood around your door frame, because tonight at midnight, God's going to kill the firstborn of every household that doesn't have this blood on their door. And also don't tell anybody about it. Don't let the Egyptians know because I would hate to pass by an Egyptian's house.
Yeah.
And they
Well,
were seemingly,
even if like the Egyptians might have seen it and wonder what was going on, but even so, they're not going to know the proper way to slaughter the animal and to apply this and everything else. But
well, yeah,
I think it's funny that God needs signposts to okay, this door, don't kill. This door, we're good. This door, going.
yeah.
God can't make the distinction, and they're living in a separate area anyway.
Yeah, well, are they living in a separate area? I mean, I know they're living in Goshen, but I would imagine that there are probably Hebrew people like mixed in different towns because you need the labor there. That kind of gets to what my
Possibly.
question is. Yeah, and it gets to my question, which is that what kind of are they living in like a barrack style system where you have some Hebrew slaves, some non-Hebrew slaves, and those are the people that are being like those. That's the distinction that's being made. So like God's going to go and kill the firstborn of these people. It's not as if he's like wandering through the palace halls, like killing the workers in the palace. He is, but that's not where the Hebrews live. God doesn't need like a sign for like which door is it there. It's going to be amongst the
Yeah,
Hebrews.
yeah, I guess. But I mean, also the idea that there might be Hebrew slaves in other parts of Egypt to do various different things. Like, what's the dissemination network to get them the information that they
Mm,
need? You know
yep.
what I mean?
Yeah. No. Very true. Yeah. You think that's where the long having a long
Well,
staff
but
comes
then
in handy?
also like some of the plagues affected all of Egypt except for Goshen. So any of the Hebrews that were living in those other areas would have been afflicted
Affected.
as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's see.
Sorry,
So
I'm flipping through some of this stuff, and some of these rules. You eat it with your cloak tucked into your belt.
mhm.
We'll get to it, but it's just
Yeah, I think I'd like to know. I would like to see like a modern rendition of like what you had to look like in order to have your Passover meal. The idea here, so like all of these rules are being like specified now. Like here's how you eat the Passover meal. You need to eat in haste. You need to tuck your cloak in, have your sandals on, whatever. Like have your hat on because you're about to go. But I just wonder like how that would look. How that what yeah. So anyway, so I'll skip down to verse 12. On the same night, on that same night, I will pass through. This is the Lord speaking. This is what the Lord told Moses. On that same night, I will pass through Egypt and strike down every firstborn of both people and animals, and I will bring judgment on all the gods of Egypt. So now he's moved on from humans. He's like about to bring judgment on the gods. I am the Lord. Go ahead.
I'm just like he's gonna strike down the firstborn of both people and animals. Like is he striking down the firstborn of the gods? How is he bringing judgment on the gods of Egypt?
So the way I read that is that he is going to basically he's going to what's the word whenever you make someone, he's going to make impotent their powers. He's going to say, those aren't the gods that are in control of these things. Like, I am the God that's in control of that. So, like, whatever
So,
the
but is this an explicit, like, that these gods are real? That they exist and they have power?
this God, yeah, that's one of the more confounding things to me as we read the Old Testament here. It's almost as if Yahweh, Adonai, whatever, has no problem. Hashem has no problem admitting that there are these other gods, but he is the ultimate God. It's like,
Right.
so yeah, are we to even the first testament or the first commandment, like no other gods before me? It's like, well, that shouldn't be a problem if there are no other gods. Like you would call it something else. You would say,
I mean, that could kind of be explained away, but then you've got this other. We went through some of it in Genesis. There's some kind of information about other gods being out there. There's this, then there's that. You add it all together, and it definitely paints the picture that there are other gods. They are real gods. You're just not allowed to worship them because this God's the most powerful.
right. And so there's that interpretation, but also kind of going back to what I was saying, the way I was reading it before, you could assume, let's say that you, Chris, believed in, whatever sort of, the toilet God, and that's where all the water and thunder comes from. I could demonstrate if I was the real bringer of thunder and water, I could demonstrate that for you and then nullify your toilet God. And so maybe that's all they're doing. Maybe that toilet God doesn't exist. You just believe in it. If I demonstrate an alternate form of that power such that it's sufficient to keep you from believing in the toilet God, then that's what I've done. I've brought my judgment.
So killing the firstborn is going to demonstrate that the other gods are not real?
I don't think that I think that's a separate thing. I think he's killing the firstborn. This is punishment. This is
right. That's what I'm saying. Like, and so, but what's happening then? Like, this seems, if God is saying and demonstrating that there are no other gods, how is it, like, that seems to be a very important thing that's missing. You know what I mean? Like,
but,
that, if this is going from polytheism to monotheism, this is a very glaring omission. Like, I'm struggling to find the words. This is so important,
I think so I'm not there with you yet. I want to know what you mean when you say what. So what's being omitted? What's missing?
How is he bringing judgment? What you're saying is, he's going to demonstrate these gods are false. How is that being done? It just says I'll bring judgment on them, and that's it.
Yeah. No idea. Like that's
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, again, if I'm trying to be as charitable as possible, that's the best I can do. Like I really don't know how far else to go, except. But imagine if we weren't thinking about this and trying to come up with an explanation. This would be fine. Just the words themselves would be fine if you had a dogmatic belief. But if you wanted to truly try to eviscerate like what's happening, like pick it apart, it kind of just falls to pieces because you're like, okay, well, what are you saying exactly? Like, there's not a lot. There's not many other ways to go. Even being charitable, it's like, I guess you're going to exhibit your powers against these other gods, or you're going to say there are other gods, but I'm the strongest God. Yeah. But none of those things fall in line with just sheer, uncut, unadulterated belief. Yeah. Believing is enough. I'm going to read the NASB real quick. I will go through the land and I will fatally strike all the firstborn, and against all the gods of Egypt I will execute judgment. So the same thing. That's so strange. I'm going to see what the Hebrew says.
The Catholic version says both human and animal to render justice against all the gods of Egypt.
Yes. So yeah, he wants to he's going to shoot him. He's going to do something. What verse are we on?
Well, but the Catholic version kind of implies that killing the firstborn is the thing. I'm going to kill these to render justice against all the gods of Egypt.
And on the same note, yeah, okay. The Hebrew Old Testament or the Jewish Old Testament. I will pass through the land of Egypt on this night, and I will smite every firstborn in the land of Egypt, both man and beast, and upon all the gods of Egypt I will wreak judgments. I, the Lord. You see what Rashi says? He's talking about idols. They're talking about idols. So the wooden gods will rot, the metal gods will melt and flow into the ground. That's an interesting interpretation.
Yeah, but again, it doesn't say that.
So I know. It's just another interpretation. I like my interpretation better than Rashi.
Yeah.
No, I'm kidding. But That's it. I hadn't thought of that. That's very smart. I like that. That works. Sure. But also,
Kind
it
of.
it also says, I will bring judgment. He goes on to explain that when he says, I the Lord, I myself will do that, he's saying I will do it not through a messenger. He's like, we're done with Moses. Now it's time for me to step up and reveal myself, I guess. So that's Rashi.
And again, also thinking though, this going back to the Satan thing, if this is God's right hand, is Satan the one that's coming through and killing everybody? The spirit of this is, like in the beginning, according to the Satan book, in the beginning, Satan was not a person that had powers and was in charge of evil or anything. It was just whatever angel or whatever God decided to use to execute a judgment of some kind, to do something.
Yeah.
So, but it makes me wonder how, in the Christian mindset, is this Satan doing this before the fall? I don't know.
I don't know. You got me beat on that because I have done no reading about. I don't know anything about Satan.
Oh, I've just started. I've got so many books with bookmarks in them right now. I need to sit down, hunker down, and just get them.
That's the tough part for me is like as the stories continue to unfold, you kind of get more context for previous things, and like your understanding develops and evolves. How do I not want to go back? It's like watching a convoluted movie for the second time after the killer's been revealed. You're like, oh, these clues I missed,
yeah.
It's hard. So anyway, the blood, this is verse 13. The blood will be a sign for you on the houses where you are. And when I see the blood, I will pass over you. No destructive plague will touch you when I strike Egypt. Why didn't we put that blood on the door beforehand then?
Yeah. I'm sorry.
That's okay. You mean wait?
I was just going to pull this out. So in case anybody's curious, they want
to stand up. Oh, okay.
They want to get it. That's it. That's where this is coming from. At least my kind of warped understanding of it. I'm only a third of the way in. But that's it.
Okay. Let's see. So verse 14, this is a day you are to commemorate for the generations to come. You shall celebrate it as a festival to the Lord, a lasting ordinance. For 7 days, eat bread without yeast. On the first day, remove the yeast from your houses. If you don't, anyone who eats yeast will be cut off from Israel. And on the first day, hold a sacred assembly. On the seventh day, hold a sacred assembly. I'm assuming we're saying like kind of come together in prayer, kind of come together and hold like I think there's a word for it. It's not is it Seder? Passover Seder? Yeah, I think that's the word, Seder. So anyway, again, I just kind of want to caveat this by saying like these are areas in which I'm ignorant, so I'm not trying to be flip. I really, if I don't have a knowledge of those things, I'm not trying to be, like you said earlier, I'm not trying to offend anybody. I just am ignorant. Okay.
Yeah. We're just trying to think about it best we can.
So skipping down to 21, Moses summoned the elders, all the elders of Israel, and said to them basically what God told him to do so far. And then he said, so he's like, select the animal, kill the animal, put the blood on your door, and get dressed. Because at midnight, God's coming and he's killing everybody. So he then in 24 says, obey these instructions as a lasting ordinance for you and your descendants. When you enter the land that the Lord will give you as he promised, observe this ceremony. So we're going to continue this Passover ceremony forever, like as long as we can.
Does this mean for Passover, you're still supposed to put blood on your door?
No, but there are little things I meant to do that before we do the Passover episode. I'm going to see like how it's currently dealt with or whatever, how they do it now. But there are some things that I've researched, like you're supposed to, I'm not sure if we're going to get to it today. I'm not quite sure what we're going to hit, but the redemption of the firstborn. So God's going to kill all the firstborn of Egypt, but henceforth, all of the Israelites have to redeem their firstborn to God. They owe them their firstborn because they were saved from this. Or,
right. I've heard that.
Yeah. So the firstborn animal, the firstborn livestock has sacrificial animals have to be killed. You slaughter them and I'm not sure if you at least have to kill them. I'm not sure what else, but the firstborn human offspring also have to be redeemed. I'm not sure what they did back then, but nowadays, if you're like a practicing Jew, you will give 5 shekels to a local rabbi or something. There's like a person, a specific person, I forget what they're called, who gets the shekelim from the person to redeem your firstborn. It's almost like a rite of passage type of thing, like being what's it called in Christianity when you get dunked?
born again, baptized.
baptized. It's almost like a baptism type of thing. Again, not the same, I admit, but it's like a thing you do with your firstborn, right? And so, yeah, and so like that's a modern day thing that we do, or that they do whenever it comes to the Passover. I've also seen because they just celebrated Passover here a couple of months
Mm-hmm.
ago, right? Or last
Yep.
month. Whenever you eat the lamb, you drop a bit of wine on the plate to symbolize
Mm-hmm.
the sacrifice that the Egyptians made for your exodus. But other than that, I don't know. I don't know anything else.
Yeah.
Whenever we do the Passover episode, I hope to have a lot more information.
Yeah. I'll do some more specific stuff. Now that I know we're gonna do a whole episode.
Oh, sorry, I probably could have told you that. What does okay? So anyway, whenever you make this a lasting ordinance, and make sure that your children know about it. They say you have to ask them, or when your children ask, what does this ceremony mean to you? Tell them it's the Passover sacrifice to the Lord, who passed over the houses of the Israelites in Egypt and spared our homes when he struck down the Egyptians. So the people bowed and they worshipped, and the Israelites did just what the Lord commanded Moses and Aaron.
So how did they worship though? They didn't have prescription yet. There's no law how they're supposed to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Was this just them falling and prostrating themselves? Was it?
That's literally what the Hebrew Bible says. It says that the people kneeled and prostrated.
Okay.
At midnight, so we're on verse 29. At midnight, the Lord struck down all the firstborn in Egypt, and from the firstborn of Pharaoh, who sat on the throne, to the firstborn of the prisoner who was in the dungeon, and the firstborn of all the livestock as well. Pharaoh and all his officials and all the Egyptians got up during the night, and there was loud wailing in Egypt, for there was not a house without someone dead.
Yeah, and again, you talk about Pharaoh. Was he the firstborn? I assume that's how it goes.
Yeah. I would love to know exactly what we're supposed to think of that. Why was the Pharaoh still around? But as we'll learn, let's see. So I'll go ahead and verse 31. Pharaoh summoned Moses and Aaron and said, "Get out, leave my people, you and all the Israelites. Go and worship the Lord as you've requested. Take your flocks and herds and go. Also bless me."
Did he cover his face so he couldn't see him? Because he's.
Well,
Oh yeah, next
exactly.
time I see your face, I'm gonna kill you.
Yeah, exactly. Moses. Yeah, yeah. He's like, Moses, is that you? Okay. And he's like, also bless me. The blessing there is interesting. Is he basically, what's he saying there? Like, give me a little kiss on the forehead before you go? Like, what's he saying?
I don't know, but I mean, I've been horrible to you. I've hardened my heart, and I've not let you go, and I've oppressed you and made you make bricks without straw and all this stuff. But bless me before you go.
Tell me I'm a good boy.
Yeah. And again, does Pharaoh still think that they're just going for a couple of days to make sacrifices?
Good question. To me, it seems like he's like, yeah, exactly. What he's like, all right, now get out of here, and I'll see you in 3 days.
Well, he's already kind of hinted at it, when we were talking about, you want to go and do evil, he's already kind of got an inkling, at least, that they want to go for good. So is he still thinking that they're going to go for good, or are they going to go for 3 days or whatever?
Yep. That's true. Let's see. Do we get, okay. So the Egyptians urged the people to hurry and leave the country, for otherwise they said, we'll all die. So the people took their dough before the yeast was added and carried it on their shoulders in kneading troughs wrapped in clothing. So
how long ago, this is just a side note, how long ago did they know that yeast was the thing that was working and were able to cultivate it and stuff?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure. Do you think that seems a little anachronistic for them to have yeast in this era?
Not necessarily. I just don't know when that point. And besides, if they're taking all their stuff, the Pharaoh said, "Take your flocks and herds and all this, everything," and they're taking stuff from the Egyptians. Don't you think they could take the yeast with them?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you like.
It may not have been in the bread yet, but
yeah, no, that could be. Yeah, it's strange for them to be like, all right, hurry up and get the hell out of here. And also here, take all these things. Hold on. We got more. Here comes more stuff,
Take all the gold and silver and
yeah. And then, so again, the Lord had made the Egyptians favorably disposed towards the people, as we've already learned, and they gave them what they asked for. So they plundered the Egyptians.
Yeah. But also, like it says, they didn't say, get out of here and go because we like you. We're ready. you're great. If you want to go, go. They were feared for their lives. They said, if you don't go, we're all going to die. And yet they're favorably disposed. Like, it doesn't line up there either, seemingly.
Yeah, that's fair. So the Israelites journeyed from...
But also I'm sitting here thinking, again, they're in Goshen, are they leaving Goshen and going into the rest of Egypt in order to plunder Egypt? Are the Egyptians bringing everything to them?
Yeah, is there like a procession of Egyptians who are like zombie-like, bringing all of their
Paying
riches
tribute
to them? Yeah. Who knows? Yeah, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense here. And the Israelites journeyed from Ramses to Succoth. There were about 600,000 men on foot, besides women and children. Many other people went up with them, and also large droves of livestock, both flocks and herds. When the dough the Israelites had brought from Egypt, they baked loaves of unleavened bread. So they had an oven. The dough was without yeast because they had been driven out of Egypt, and they did not have time to prepare food for themselves. Seems like a little bit of retconning there.
But and the dough was already made. It just didn't have yeast in it yet.
Yeah. If you have time to make the dough.
Yeah, I mean, and even so, that's what sourdough is. You mix up the dough and then you let it sit, and the yeast will do its thing.
Yeah, exactly. They didn't have time to make sourdough, maybe, but if you got time to mix the dough, all that really happened is they forgot the yeast.
They didn't have time to make that good bread.
Yeah, exactly. Like it'd be like making cinnamon pancakes and forgetting the cinnamon. You still made pancakes. Like you just didn't put the cinnamon in. Okay. The length of time
I have to eat my French toast without syrup.
Yeah, like no, sorry. Dude, put syrup on there. I can't. I gotta go. And then they sit down.
I'm taking the syrup with me, but I got all this gold in front of it. I can't get to it.
Yeah, there's just it's stacked so high. I can't reach my yeast.
We haven't invented Tetris yet. I don't know how to pack stuff.
Everyone's carrying everything by hand. Put it in your bags. Why? I can't hear you. All right. So the length of time the Israelite people lived in Egypt was 430 years to the day. After which all of the Lord's divisions left Egypt. Because the Lord kept...
Then we already established that Moses was Joseph's great-grandson, and we were 430 years.
No, yeah, so you said that, but that's not the case. I think we went over that. Go ahead.
Okay, go ahead.
I don't think that's the case.
So I thought let me go back.
Yeah. Let's listen to the episode.
Yeah, trying to remember where it was that we were.
Well, and also I think Joseph. I think Moses came from the Levite camp. He wasn't Joseph's descendant, isn't that right? Moses is a Levite. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, Moses is a Levite.
So you're trying to figure out Jacob. How he's related to Jacob?
No. Was it Jacob? I thought it. Yeah, you're right. No, I wasn't saying that Moses came from Joseph's line. Right. I was just saying like that generation. It's either Jacob or Levi. It's got to be one of the two. So he's either
Joseph or Levi. Joseph or Levi. He came from Jacob.
No, Jacob.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. He came from Jacob. It had to have been, he's either Jacob's great-grandson or Levi's great-grandson. I think it was Jacob.
Let's see, because I'd like to know.
Yeah. According to answers in Genesis, it's an incomplete genealogy. But the whole thing, like there's genealogy all throughout the Bible, especially there in Genesis. There's like a chapter, at least one chapter that's entirely devoted to genealogy. It's very important. So I don't see how that would be suddenly an incomplete genealogy. But let's see.
Well, I've got the timeline of the Bible right here. Let me see if I have it in here.
Yeah, I put the poster up myself.
Oh, sweet.
I didn't even think to look at it. So according to something I found on, I don't even know what, BibleStudy.com maybe. No, it's JesusWalk.com. From Jacob, we have Levi, then Kohath, then Amram, then Moses. So So it's great-great-grandson. That still seems way too short. Well, great-great-grandson from Jacob.
Yeah. These dudes are living a long time.
So, but okay. So when Joseph came to Egypt, from that day, 430 years, he is the great-grandson of Joseph's brother.
Yeah. Here's Levi. Yeah, you're right. Kohath, Amram, and then Moses.
Yeah.
Okay. So give Levi 100 years, Kohath 200, Amram 300. Moses is almost 100. I mean, That could work. They'd all have to be aged as hell.
It's a stretch, but
I mean, okay, but you know what you're getting in. You could summarize what you're saying by saying, or you could kind of like assume then that these are kind of like legendary figures. Maybe they're not. Maybe this didn't really happen. That's something that the 430 years number to the day. That's what that says to me, is that anything that's a nice round number to the day just sounds like this is the story we've come up for this, you know? Because if they're not writing things down, if they have no idea about like when things happened, then they're not keeping track of the time. 430 years to the day, you can say 12 generations or so many generations, and I would say, oh, okay, sure. But you don't know how many days it's been, right?
Right. But like, so yes, it's being made up. And we talked about, numerology in the Bible, and you have sevens all over the place, and then you multiply thousands, 7,000, 77,000, so on and so forth. Things like that. Yes, they're exaggeration. Yes, they probably didn't know exactly what it was, but 430 years, even if it's just a ballpark, you know what I mean? Like, they're saying it for a reason. Even if the number's not entirely accurate, you've got to. This isn't an example of, like I said, the thousands and thousands of thousands, so on and so forth. This is 430 years. It's a discrete, compact bit, and there's just not enough generations, and it seems very, very out of place.
I would love for there to be more generations in there. I would agree. But also, I don't, if we're talking about people who are living 170 years, Joseph lived 147 years. Is that Joseph or Jacob? Jacob was 147. Joseph, I think, was 130 or something. I forget. These folks live a long time. So what I'm saying,
we talked about this before, and I think we did the math at that point. I'll have to go back and re-listen, but my thing is, like, I think the 430 years kind of gives you a reason for them to be so many people. 600,000 men plus women and children. If it's 430 years, you can kind of see the population spreading to that point, but you have so many generations. How many kids are these people having in order to make that number? You know what I mean?
No, that's a great point.
That's kind of what I'm getting at there.
Okay, I gotcha. Yeah, that's a very good point. And again, it's interesting to me, or it's the part about it that I find compelling is that we are content with these nice round even numbers, choosing your justification or your explanation to explain why they're so profligate, right? Why they're so numerous. But to me, it sticks out in that it's just a way to it's a way of simplifying the narrative and to say, look, we don't know for sure, but we know, but here's the story that we're going with, and here's the number we came up to explain it. And it takes me right out of it. It almost makes me not want to question it. And so what I'm getting at here is I appreciate you looking into it so deeply and thinking about it so much, because when I see those things, 430 years to the very day, for as fun, as much fun as I'm having going over this stuff and giving it credit, whenever I see that, I'm reminded that this is kind of a fairy tale. It's kind of a legend, and I'm like, okay, I don't know how to put it except to say,
I think I get what you're coming at.
It makes it. I forget that we're supposed to be trying to make this make sense. When I read that, I'm like, oh, okay, yeah. So anyway, my point being, thank you for thinking about that. I wouldn't know how to, if I'm just trying to make it make sense. It's like they all lived 130 years. I don't know, because otherwise you're like, this is a cartoon. I don't know. I'm being more cynical than I try to be. That I want to let myself be. But
I don't know. It's just one of those things that sticks out to me. If this is so important, you think they get the numbers right? They've got the genealogy there. I don't know. We can move on.
Well, it's worth thinking about. If you're gonna get this has been committed to a holy book, so either say it's 430 years to the very day and that's the truth, or you say it was 12 generations or 4 generations. That you can say, like, that you have proof of. You've already done it. This book it's not outlined by a calendar. Like, we're not following along day by day, so you can't just come out and say this very specific thing and not have someone like you come along and be like, well, wait a second.
Yeah, well, I mean, So I get what you're saying, and I think, like I said, that it's kind of a justification for how there's so many people here, and we've been under oppression for this long. You know what I mean? You would think that for a people that take this genealogy stuff so seriously, and there's evidence of that, it's being that, the early Christians were Jews and they followed the genealogy back of Jesus to prove that he was in the line of David or whatever. Genealogy was a big thing, so have that in there. It's in there for a reason. And then they have this other thing that kind of contradicts it, and they're using it for two different purposes, and you can't kind of mesh the two together. You know what I mean? And that's what stands out to me.
Okay. Yeah, that's a great point. You're absolutely right. And so I guess I'll ask before we move on, what do you make of that? Like, what does that mean to you as someone as we engage with this project? Does it?
Well, again, just coming up in that kind of fundamentalist evangelical kind of system, it just seemed the thing that stands out to me is that no, this can't have happened.
Right.
This has to be an origin myth.
Mm-hmm. Does the mythology about it just make it mean to you that it's not worth looking? It's not worth like exalting to the height of a holy book.
Yeah, kind of. It's not scripture. It's not true and real and prescriptive and everything else. You can take it and use it and find meaning in it and all that, and that's great. But it's kind of like taking Harry Potter as your God almost. I don't want to be flippant, and I don't want to like put down anyone's belief or anything, but it takes out one of the main pillars holding this up as holy to me.
Sure, that makes sense. Yeah. It's like a foundational conceit that you don't have anymore. Yeah,
exactly.
Okay. Very good.
It's a really great way to put it.
Well, thank you. No, anyway, so thank you. All right, so I really that's pretty much all. I really wouldn't know where else to go if we wanted to do the Passover separately. So, would you be okay with us leaving it there then?
Yeah, I think that's a good place. I think when we do the Passover stuff, we're gonna have to go back a little bit into the plague bit, but we've covered the plagues here, and I think that works very well. It's a good, neat place to put a button on it.
Okay, great. Well, that being the case, we will indeed probably start back over, kind of loop back around to the beginning of Exodus 12 and maybe the end of 11, and you on with the idea. The idea that I had was to do the Passover, perhaps as its own episode, given that we could probably get 45 minutes to an hour out of it, and then the Exodus, the Exodus account, move forward with that after the Passover. Yeah. Is there anything else you wanted to commit to this episode before we sign off?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Will that be in the case?
The 600,000 men, women, plus women and children thing is difficult. Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, I agree.
One last observation.
Yeah,
it's
that
difficult
is something
to swallow.
It's a lot. It's a lot of people to have gotten all that information to. Like that's a lot of people new to slaughtered
animal.
People
talked about the Exodus happening, and how long, if they had been however many people wide, how long it would have been, how long it would have taken them to march out, things like that. But you're right. If that many people to disseminate this information to, and all of these people agreeing that Moses is going to be the one to speak for him and all of that.
Yeah. You're having. That's a lot of people to act as one. Something I'll add, since I haven't done so yet. I read that Exodus book by Friedman that you were advocating for, that you read anyway. In it, one of the main points to which he returns often in that book is maybe it wasn't as many people as they say. Maybe it wasn't all these things. Who cares? The point is, the story is the story. This is what we're supposed to draw these themes from it and these ideas, not get our ledgers out and take account for every single human being that's being talked about here. So that being said, the Bible does say 600,000, so that's what you and I are here to do. So
exactly.
Okay, well, great points all around. We've done a really good job, and we're so smart. So I think we'll leave it at that. Let's see. Yep. So that's it. We want to just a reminder that we are available to continue the conversation in the comments on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify. We'd love to have any kind of question brought in, just so that we can
We did have one question early on Spotify, and I responded, but I kind of had to respond by making a new comment. So I don't know, for whatever reason, I can't respond directly to the guy. So if you're listening, you can go back and check that out. If you ask a question, if I have difficulty like that or whatever, check other comments. We'll try to get back to you as best we can.
Right. And we really do appreciate the feedback. I've gotten I've gotten good feedback from people that I know that have been listening, and from other folks who have left comments on the various channels. And just want to let you guys know that we appreciate it. Yeah. And so that's that. Until next time, I'm Jeff.
I'm Chris.
And this has been Eating the Apple.
I need to get me one of those stabs.
All right.